Topical and atypical. Unfiltered and independent. 100% authentic and intelligent.
All right. Are y'all ready? Bust out your Amanda Lander notebook, get your word of the day logbook, and let's get into it. Don't forget, after the show, our SEAL Squad members head on over to Patreon for the after show kickback, where we talk about all the things that went on in the show and how to turn it into action. You ready? Amanda Lander! Learn it. Okay, so we're getting off to a difficult start. I have no idea why that video is not playing, which concerns me because now I'm wondering, is that going to be all the videos? You know, StreamYard just likes to decide to just do its own thing sometimes, and I don't even understand why is this blue? You feel me? Why is this blue? Good morning. Welcome to Views from Amanda Land's. Why is this doing this? I have no idea. Wait, let me make sure that it's going to play other videos. Hold on, because oh, you know what? I got to leave and come back. Because they on some otherness. I'll be right back, y'all. I'll be right back. Be a better way, and we've got to make it. It's got to be a better way. Yay! Okay, we got it together. Good morning, Views from Amanda Land. This is your news and truths by any joke necessary. Thank you for joining us for this, the last episode of the show. Yeah, I know. But you know, it's fine. It's fine because we've got to grow. We've got to shift, we've got to adjust all the things. And we have a really great episode that we're closing with today here on Views from Amanda Land. You know, we've got Bri Newsome joining us. And so I feel like that's a great way to end this show, with someone who has been consistent and solid and just really a real one from day one. Okay. So we are going to do that. And we're also going to make sure that we play all of our favorite jingles and whatnot. So shout out to everybody joining us here. And if this is your first time, you can still go back and listen to the interviews that have been here, because the interviews really are fabulous. And the folks that have been on the show have been speaking about things that for the most part are timeless. You know what I'm saying? So it's not even gonna matter that it was in the past. Someone just asked if I'm still going to Cuba. I just came back from Cuba. I done been there and back. Talking about, am I still going to Cuba? I done been there and back. All right. I done been to Cuba and back. You feel me? So we're going to talk about Cuba today. My trip to Cuba. We're going to talk about our 60-second headlines. And we're also just going to make sure that we send ourselves off into, so someone is new here and they're talking like this is like a live chat where I just answer questions in real time. So if y'all wouldn't mind just getting them organized on how the show operates in the chat, I would appreciate it. So, I really also just want to make sure that I give space for just, you guys sharing your thoughts on this show and how Views for Amanda Land has been helpful to you. And I'm going to also ask you for our bonus question.
Bonus question, bonus question, bonus question, bonus question. bonus question.
So we've been doing this show now for a year. Many of you have said that it really offered you a lot of new information. It really opened your eyes. And I think that that's really useful and great and awesome. But if it only stays with you, then it really doesn't do the work that it needs to do. So our bonus question is, how will you use what you've learned and pay it forward? How will you use what you've learned and pay it forward? Because the whole idea of gathering this information is to disperse it. But there's going to be different ways that we disseminate that information, right? There's going to be different methods. I know for me, I am moving into a space of really committing myself to doing that 100% through art. And I feel like that is something that is going to be very challenging for myself, but also very inspiring. Not inspiring is not some word, but very empowering for the people. And I'm going to really commit to what I really believe, which is that the art is an integral part of us challenging and moving through the world that we're in and dismantling it to make something better. So I can't keep like fracturing my, what's the word I'm looking for? Fracturing my laser, my laser beam. And instead, I need to refine it to be able to utilize it in the most effective way possible. If you are over here on Instagram, please make sure to come over here on YouTube, Amanda Seals TV, and join us. So the SEAL Squad is in the chat. So shout out to everybody over there on the SEAL Squad who is talking about what happens over there on my Patreon. And remember, my Patreon is $5 a month, and it is a really great way to not only support my work, but also to support yourselves, because it's a great community. And I know people on here are saying like, I'm a miss bonus question. Actually, Rishla said I'm a miss bonus question. And don't fret. I will be making use of some of these intros in other ways. Like that's the thing. Like it doesn't, just because I stopped using it on Views from Inland don't mean it just died altogether. All right. High Quality White will still make appearances. Bonus question will still make appearances. Black Era News will still make appearances. These types of things will still make appearances. I mean, more than likely, it'll just be in bite size, So don't ever worry about having to miss the joints and the jingles, because the jingles is gonna jangle, okay? The jingles is gonna jangle, you know? Because I know Adrian loves sports in Black Year News. How I'm gonna take that from Adrian? How I'm gonna take that? You feel me? How I'm gonna take that? I can't do that. I can't take that. Now, I also want to let y'all know that I'm a tad bit delirious. Because I have been on a bus with 25 people for 5 days. And let me tell you, man, that is its own experience in beautiful ways. It's not even like I'm throwing shade as much as it's just 25 people for 5 days nonstop is just a lot of, it's just a lot. And for someone like me who is very, I need breaks. You know, my mom used to say that, like, when I was a kid, she had to like really notice that there would be times when I wanted people around, and then there were times when I didn't want people around. And she had to like pay close attention to know when was when in order to meet me at that need. So shout out to my mama for paying attention on that regard. Because yes, X grade dub, it's just a lot of stimulation. And I really didn't get like those moments to decompress. So I feel like it's all happening like all at once right now, like decompression. So shout out to everybody. So we're going to be talking about my Cuba trip later in the show, but the real conversation around Cuba is going to happen in our after show kickback, which is going to become the critical thinking kickback for the SEAL Squad. So I know that our SEAL Squad has become very accustomed to our gathering spaces on Zoom, and I absolutely do not want to take that away. And so we're going to figure out what is the best time for those critical thinking spaces to take place and keep them consistent. Sometimes I'll be able to be there, sometimes I won't, but the space will always be there for y'all. And so we are going to do a critical thinking kickback that will today be focused on Cuba and what does solidarity and revolution actually mean? Because I gotta tell you, I experienced that. I really thought that I knew. And I went on this trip and got a very different understanding that I really needed to have. So I really want to extend that to y'all. And so I just want all of my SEAL Squad to know that even though we have had the after show kickback, and if you all feel like, hey, we still would like it to remain at 3:00 on a Wednesday, then we'll do that. However, it's going to shift and it will be the critical thinking kickback, and it's going to be for the SEAL Squad. So shout out to all of my SEAL Squad members. Like I said, you can join Patreon for $5 a month at the link patreon.com/Amanda Seals. And remember, you can join, and if you don't like it, you just cancel. That's really it. You may have lost $5, but you at least got a chance to experience what we're doing over there, and you at least contributed $5 to the work I do. And I want to again thank all of you for supporting the work that I'm doing, because ultimately I'm not at a phase where the work that I'm doing actually really gets income. So, you know, the shirts, when you buy the shirts, that does that. You know, Amanda Land Exports is really like the place where the income comes to support the work that I'm doing as I continue to build into this next phase. So thank you all so much for that. Shall we find out who is joining us for our last roll call? Hey! Hey! Come on! and tell me where you're from. It may be 104 episodes, but we still got more work to do. Amanda Landers here to learn. Drop in and tell me where you're watching from. We got Mexico in the house. We got DC, Minneapolis. We got West Newton, Pennsylvania, Patterson, New Jersey. We got Hayward, California, Dallas, Texas, Gastonia, North Carolina, Portland, Oregon, Nestor City, California, Chicago, South Bend, Indiana, Los Angeles, Brick City, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Brooklyn, San Leandro, the Wickwam, unceded territory in so-called Muskoka, Canada, on Turtle Island, Las Vegas, Nevada, Chicago, Lafayette, Indiana, St. Louis, always in her repping. What's up, Hamid? Toronto, Canada, Union City, California, La Habra, California, Douglasville, Georgia, it's Lisa in Augusta, Georgia, Dallas, Texas, another Fort Worth, Texas, Washington Heights, but there's no place like Amanda Land, though. Amanda Landers here to learn. Drop in and tell me where you're watching from. Carmenton, Lythell, Dallas, Tejas, Reese's in London town. We got the Psych Ward in Boston. What up, and Westchester, Detroit 313. We got Treaty 13 in Canada, AK Toronto, Long Island, New York, Brooklyn, another Sunset Park, Brooklyn, Houston, Chicago, Metro Detroit, Omaha, Nebraska, the LBC, Astoria, Queens. Oh my God, Bangkok is in the building. Portland, Jersey City, Baltimore, Maryland, Houston, Texas. Oh my goodness, y'all are really in here today, and I appreciate it. I feel very, very, very loved. Brazil, Medellin, Malaysia. Pete is joining us in Ireland. We've got Kampala, Uganda. The Fiji Islands. Jarabacoa, or Jarabacoa, Dominica Republic. Man. We built something here, man. So let me just tell y'all something. You know, when I started Views from Amanda Land, it was on the heels of my radio show being canceled. And, you know, my radio show on Radio 1 was canceled because they claimed I was too polarizing and not consistently funny. The real reason I was canceled from the radio show is because I told my partner at the radio channel, who was Colby Tyner representing Reach Media, that I found it unacceptable for him to ask me to remove my video about the Zionists canceling my shows at the Kimmel Center in Philadelphia via my manager instead of asking me directly, because it was such a personal request and he had never gone that route. And I have an issue when people switch up the way they do things based on what's going to make them more comfortable, even though it's to make me uncomfortable. And, you know, he felt when I brought this to his attention, I did so in such a very calm, peaceful, respectful, considerate manner because I thought he was my friend. And he showed me that day that he actually was not my friend, because he made it very clear that it didn't matter how it made me feel. Business is business, and he was going to do whatever he wanted to do. And that was the day that I also realized that I have to really remove myself from the corporate space altogether, because these people really are not your friends, and they will pretend and parade and wear the facade of friendship simply just to control you, to manage you, to handle you. And so that is what Colby Tyner did to me. And I will never get over it, for the record. I will never, ever get over it. But it was a graceful thing that God gave me, that, and when I say God, I'm referring to the energy amongst us, because it is what feeds and provides for us. And it was a really graceful thing that it gave me, because it really empowered me to know how to once and for all really trust in myself. For real. And I know some of you might be like, really? Like, you seem like before. And it's like, listen, I've always been confident about my skills. However, that experience really gave me the confidence, forced me to find confidence in my purpose, which is different. And so, shout out to my boy James Bland, who, when this happened on a Tuesday, the next day, I called and was like, is this a sign? And what is this a sign of? Like, is this trying to tell me that I should not be doing this work? And he was like, absolutely not. I do not receive that. I think it's telling you that you have to do this work differently. So I received that. The next day was a Thursday, and I called Quentin, shout out to Funky Dineva, because he had experience, going from a canceled show to creating his own space on the YouTubes. And so I asked him, where does he think I should do, just for some advice. And I was like, I was thinking about, this is in November of 2024. And I was like, so I was thinking about starting at the top of the year. And he was like, top of the year? Baby, you need to start on Monday. I said, I'm sorry, what? He was like, you need to start whatever you're going to do on Monday. And I said, oh, wow. But let me tell you why, if you didn't know, why it's so necessary to always give your all, even if it doesn't get results that you think it should. In 2020, during the pandemic, I really still had people that I needed to pay. I had a staff that included a producer, a marketing person, an assistant, and I wanted to continue to make sure that they were supported in the pandemic. However, we needed to be doing something, right? Like, it wasn't like I can just be paying these people for nothing. So we needed to be doing something. And so I said, well, let's create a show. And even though all of us aren't necessarily the producers, we all have skills that we can, contribute to this. And it will at least be something that we're making, and making something is valuable. So we started creating Views from Amandaland during 2020's pandemic. And my ex, who I was with at the time, helped in creating the intro. I created all the graphics, and literally we just worked on doing this show for like 4 or 5, let me think. No, like 6 months. And I only gave it up because I was taking up so much time in my life editing that I was like, I have to let this go. Now, we weren't getting views. We were posting it. We weren't getting any big set of views. It's not like it was necessarily helping me attain a bigger, Patreon audience or whatever. But we were making something. And we were making it from a pure place. And I think that's the caveat I need to add. We were making it from a pure place. And so when Quentin told me on that Thursday that I only had 3 days before I would have to go live on a Monday with a new show, I already had the assets of Views from Amandaland. They were sitting in a folder on my computer. And yes, they may have needed to be tweaked a little bit, but ultimately they were ready, because even when no one was looking, we were still putting our all into it. And so if anything that you get from me today, I want to just encourage you to remember that it's not about who's watching you, because ultimately you're watching you, and we're all watching with our souls and spirits, even if not with our likes and super stickers, etc. And so that is how I was able to start Views from Amanda Land so expeditiously on the heels of being discarded expeditiously from Radio 1 Reach Media, which at the end of the day is a Black owned, however, capitalist, Democrat, liberal conglomerate that ultimately is going to serve corporate interests before it serves the people, period. And when we hear the quote, man's rejection is God's protection, I always hear that in reference to like dating. However, I want you to know that that's in reference to anything where you're showing up authentic, you're showing up with pure intention, and you are discarded. Okay? Where you're showing up because even if it's not even malicious, it just might not be the vibrational match for you. So I want to encourage all of us to use that when we need to remind us, to ground us. I have never been kicked out of somewhere I belonged. You know, people love to try and say, oh, Amanda's always being fired from places. However, that is simply untrue. I have been fired. However, I have also left places. I have also remained in places where my work was needed, but my energy and my personality was being disregarded. And so I removed that. Okay? So like people love to say like I was discarded from, or just like people like to say like I was fired from Insecure. I was never fired from Insecure. I was never threatened to be fired from Insecure. I never experienced any warning, nothing like that, because I always belonged on Insecure because I'm an incredible actress and I played the shit out of my role. Now, did I belong in the clique? No, which is why I was discarded from it. And I'm more than happy to be that. But my work belonged there. So I want us to take this whole time that we're on the show today to think about, you know, when it's time to leave spaces, when it's time and also how to accept when you are told to leave spaces, and how to really attempt to fortify yourself to find another route. I think people assume that I have always had some sort of like financial comfort zone, or that I've always had some wellspring of safety to go to, and that simply was not the case. The reason why I have somehow managed when I have been forced or chosen to pivot is because I have somehow managed to understand that I am a piece of a whole. And sometimes I'm the bigger piece, sometimes I'm the smaller piece. And so I adjust based on where I'm at. Like even right now, I can say to you, I really don't got no ego like that. But something I learned from this trip to Cuba and being on the bus with 25 folks was that I need to be in spaces where I am able to move freely. And also, I need to be in spaces where people know what I do. I don't want to explain myself to nobody no more. I don't want to explain what I do or what I've done to nobody no more. I've been doing this since I was 8. I don't want to answer the question, so what do you do? I don't. I know. Y'all are like, oh my God, Amanda. But I really don't. I'm sorry. I've done so much that was about public facing work that I just listen, Risha, Someone asked me, so what do you do in New York? And I said, you didn't Google me? And I wasn't even being stank. Like, I genuinely was. And she was like, did you Google everybody on the trip? And I was like, I mean, no, but like, and in real time, I was like, I guess that would sound crazy. But y'all, I just, yeah. Yes, they did interpret it as stank, but she interpreted something else as stank. So she just has a thing about, I don't know, that's her own thing. But even like dating, like, no, I refuse to date. And if someone wants to date me, I'm literally going to be like, here's my book that I didn't publish. Read it. If you still want to date me after reading it, then we'll go on a date. Like, so, yes, it was Brandon. So I know that may sound nuts to say, please just Google me. Like someone asked me yesterday from a very genuine place. Like he wasn't trying to be stank. He wasn't trying to be shady. Like he's a lovely, lovely man. And he was like, so do you think that you will have any trepidation about speaking about Cuba when you go back? And I said, oh, you don't know about me. He was like, no, I don't. I said, oh, you got to catch up. you got to catch up, man. Like, and he was not, like, I need to make it very clear, he was in no way trying to throw shade. He wasn't being ignorant. Like, he was really just genuinely asking, because we were just having a conversation at the airport. But it was like, I don't want to do this no more. I just want to be places where folks already know the time. Where folks already know, Reese, it's not really anonymity. Reese is like, in some ways, though, it's kind of a blessing when you're able to, because to cause good trouble and still have some anonymity than being known and recognized everywhere. But it's not really that. It's not really that. I think that if you may, I have lived longer in this life as someone being recognized as someone who hasn't. So it just feels weird. It just feels weird. But anywho, lessons. Speaking of lessons, let's get into our word of the day. Our word of the day is expatiate. Expatiate. E-X-P-A-T-I-A-T-E. It is a verb that means to expand on. That means to expand on, to expound, to expand on. Like Rishla just said, see, that's why y'all need to be on Patreon, because Amanda expatiates with the T, right? Okay, that's where the tea be being told. Expatiate. Bria said, have you heard about our good sis Amanda? How long do you think Malcolm X had to answer? So what do you do? I don't know, but Malcolm X also wasn't during the time of Wi-Fi. So, at some point, we're going to have to stop doing comparisons with people who have lived in entirely different worlds than we are. At some point, like there are actual, like, there are equivalencies to some degree. However, sometimes y'all are just dragging it. Okay. So Fruity and Human. So Anne says, you're going to be expatiating on your trip to Cuba later in the show. That is correct. Iman says, please expatiate on your travel. I will do so. Pete asks, I'm going to try this in an Irish accent. How many times does the read my book? I sound like a leprechaun. I'm going to stop. How many times has the read my book response been necessary? Since no one has asked me out on a date in 2.5 years, 0. I have not been asked out in 2.5 years, and I'm fine with that. I just want y'all to know I am fine with that because I feel like that's for a reason. Kismet closing out with her key position of giving us the etymology. The Latin antecedent of expatiate is expatiare, which combines the prefix ex, out of, with spatiare, to take a walk, itself from spatium, space or course. That's like my song. I am spatium. I am consequent. Wait, do you guys want to hear at Patreon? On my Patreon, do you guys want to hear on our after show kickback today the mix of I am space that made me say this is the one? Would you be curious to hear the one before and the one after? Is that something you would be interested in? Okay, so we'll do that in the after show kickback so that I can give you an idea. So y'all, I also want you to know, like, we'll be doing more music energy type things. And okay, let's pause for this. Jeremiah Walton said, I want that British guy with locks to ask you out, winky face. And I know who he's referring to. He is referring to Bob Villain of the group Bob Villain, whose real name is Pascal. And for the record, I do too. Now, some might say, Amanda, why would you say that out loud on a show? Like, that's cheesy, that's corny, because I believe in magic, okay? And I believe that these words are a spell. And that brings to light the manifestation that is referenced in The Alchemist, which is that if you want something, the universe will conspire to bring it to you. Okay? So we manifested. Hopefully the universe will expatiate on that manifestation. Let's get one more sentence for expatiate, y'all. Fatima. Miss Seals has expatiated beyond the political analyst level into the philosophical realm. We wish her well always. Y'all, Fatima gets it every time. That's literally what's happening. That is what's happened, Fatima. This is a beautiful picture for your Abby, by the way. That's literally what's happened. I have expatiated beyond the political analyst level into the philosophical realm. And what we'll talk about also during the after show kickback is my awakening also around political and what that means beyond the U.S. context. Okay? So we're going to get into all of that. Thank you all for being here. Again, this is Views from Amanda Land. We're about to enter the 11 o'clock hour. We have Bri Newsome joining us at 11:30. However, we do have some time before then. So, you know what? Let's run through our 60-second headlines. But first, let me... So there's going to be a lot of references to Cuba throughout the day. So actually, let's start with when I linked up with Vic Mensa in Cuba. All right, y'all. I got a lot of heat, pressure. You're going to find Vic. Are you going to see him? And I found him.
I found you.
You found me. So you're here, we're here. And how do you feel?
Man, I feel inspired. I've always wanted to come to Cuba. I've always been so inspired by the Cuban story, the Cuban history, and the revolutionary spirit. And I'm hungry too, I ain't gonna lie. I love Cuban food. I know so many people that wish around the world that they could come to Cuba. There's so many Cubans that are here that obviously wish they had autonomy and to move and be free.
I think it's also important just for people to start seeing that you can talk about it and be about it. You know, because I know that that's something that for a long time people have felt like, oh, only people in certain sectors talk about these things. If you're not an organizer or you're not a socialist, then, you know, you don't talk about Cuba, you don't talk about whatever. But we are both examples of artists who understand that the value of our art is in the value of our action. And so, you know, seeing you here, seeing the videos that you're making, you know, is really impactful to me also, because I'm really happy to see folks that actually stand on business and then walk it like you tuck it. Walk it.
And likewise
like
to you.
Appreciate you.
Keep arguing with them white people.
I will not.
You did one of those things recently,
I
right?
did, but they weren't white, they were
crazy.
black.
Was it black? Oh, it was
Yes,
black.
it was 20 black conservatives.
That was
I
crazy.
did that on purpose because I wasn't going to argue with white people.
Okay.
I'm like, we're not arguing with shit I already know it. But the
That was
blacks,
crazy.
you gotta.
You sharp though. I was looking at it. I was like,
Don't let me hang it. I'm dying.
you sharp though. Doing that. You had to be on your. I mean, it's not that they're sharp. You know what I mean? So
You know what the sharpness was? The sharpness was having to remain in a loving stance.
that was what it was. It was like how to stay constructive to reach your point when talking to coons.
Yes.
Man, talking to coons and staying level-headed is very difficult.
It is incredibly difficult, and people don't understand how much healing has taken place to be able to do that.
No, because the thing about coons is that they live in the trash can. So that means you gotta get in the trash can with them, or you gotta be right by the trash can, but you have to not be consumed by the trash.
No disrespect to actual raccoons, because I really do love raccoons, but your face.
Shout out to all the coons.
Listen, raccoons live in trash cans, but they're like so adorbs. But actual black coons, you know, it's always fascinating to me that.
Black coons is crazy. I've never heard that. I was gonna bring the whole tree with me. On the back, and just like, whole back will hurt me.
Vic Mensa.
There y'all go. I knew you would enjoy that, because I know y'all. But I definitely had to say no disrespect to the real raccoons, because, you know, I really love real raccoons. Real raccoons are adorable. But shout out to Vic. He's lovely. And really just he wasn't fronting. Like, I was interviewing somebody. Chantrell, I'm gonna fight you when I see you. I don't even know you, Chantrell, but I'm gonna fight you when I see you. Chantrell saying I love a little snaggletooth cutie is crazy. Hold on, back up. There's a raccoon cafe in Korea? What? I might go back to Korea just for that. I did not know. But let's make sure to bring it back to Chantrell saying I love a little snaggletooth cutie. That, you know what? Oh, Seal Squad, Amanda Landers. So I also want to let y'all know that I will continue to do Amanda Land episodes, like pop-up episodes, you know, for specific topics. So I definitely want to at some point do like a pop-up episode for Cuba. And, you know, when I'm putting out songs that go along with particular topics, particular, what's the word I'm looking for? So my vision is that what will happen is that you'll get like an Amanda Land episode that will go along with a song, that will go along with a shirt, that will go along with the topic that is a part that aligns with the song. Because none of my music is just random. It's all, you know, a part of the way I exist. But the key here is that the lives will only be available to the Patreon members. Yes, I will post the episodes. However, you all will be able to take part if you are Patreon members, in the recordings as live, in the live recordings. And Corinne asks, does this step back from VFALC allow time to go towards my radical readers creation? 1 bajillion %. Radical Readers is already beginning. We've already staffed up. So I've put together the team and we've already got things going. We had our first meeting. So Raj Radical Readers is in the works. That is my children's show that I am developing, and really excited about bringing that to folks and sharing, just something that is really about bringing our childlike energy to the places, to the masses. I think that's the thing that we need to get back to. I think that's where our brilliance exists. And so I think it's imperative that I actually create work that goes there versus continuing to make work that really just speaks to like our adult headiness. That adult headiness is just not, that ain't it. So I am going to, I'm trying to find where I have the logo. Hold on. Oh, I have it right here. Okay, so I'll show you all the logo for Raj Radical Readers, because I know you guys like things like that. I know you guys like things like that. And we'll get going with our 60-second headlines. But to be quite honest, the way that they be doing these updates on these phones, like I can't find anything anymore, and it just drives me crazy and makes it very difficult for me to be able to do things quickly. So I will find that for you later because I can't seem to find it right now, and I am trying, but it is very difficult, and maybe I'll find it right now. You see me filling time. When you do live television, you learn how to fill time like I'm doing right now. So that is what I'm doing, filling time for you guys. Okay, here we go. I found it, and it is now coming to the computadora, and it is now going to be available for you all to see in 3, 2, 1. There you go. Raj Radical Readers. It's fun, right? Yeah. So Raj Radical Readers is coming at you soon. In the meantime, in between time, I will never leave you hanging. We got, more artistry coming your way. Let's get into our 60-second headlines. 60-second headlines. And I run down some news right quick.
Run it down, mama. Put us on.
So let's start our 60-second headlines with the indigenous movements that are taking place. It's really great to see this because I think, again, it's very important to continue to amplify folks that are doing things challenging these systems, because many people think that the only way that we're going to live in this world is according to these systems. However, as you're seeing, the indigenous women in the Amazon are leading a fight against a Canadian mining company, Bellow Sun, that plans to build the largest open pit gold mine near Xingu River without the community consent. They're just like, yeah, we want to do this, and so we're doing it. And the reality of that is it needs to stop. And Canada loves to pretend like they are the exception, like y'all are some, version and vision of like, we're nice whites. No, you're not. No, you're not. And this whole business of taking gold from places, then moving it somewhere over in the Europe and refining it, taking that money and never giving it really back in a substantial way to those places, that's done. These days have got to end. So shout out to the women in the Amazon. Let me also just point it out to y'all how consistently women are at the helm of resistance. This is according to Earthly Education on Instagram, more than 100 indigenous women have been leading a peaceful occupation for over 21 days in Altamira, Brazil, defending the Xingu River in the Amazon. They are protesting Belo Sun, which plans to build the largest open pit gold mine in Brazil in the Volta Grande do Xingu region. Communities say the project violates international law as there has been no free, prior and informed consultation as required under ILO Convention 169. The Xingu River has already been heavily impacted by the Belo Monte Dam operated by Norte Energia, increasing the risk of cumulative impacts on water, biodiversity, and local livelihoods. These women leading the occupation remind us of a powerful truth. Defending the river also means defending body, life, and territory. And again, always want to remind you that these decisions, even when they're not necessarily handed down, they are allowed by a greater concept of the world, by the banking systems that says we can take when we want to take. So even if this company, Belo Monte, wasn't told by the Rothschilds or whoever, like, you need to go do this, they feel compelled to be able to, because at the end of the day, that is how the world has been set up to operate. When we want it, we can go take it, and we don't got to give you nothing. But I'll bet you they got to give a cut to those families. I bet you. I promise you. Now, when we're talking about indigenous peoples, indigenous movements, when we're talking about the necessity to move against the systems that are in place, it brings us back to ICE, because, you know, we're seeing the expansion of ICE, and the amount of people, by the way, that are being held in detention centers in the United States has apparently exceeded the amount of people that were held in concentration camps during the Third Reich's reign in Nazi Germany by 1939. So they had been in power for 3 years, and we now in the United States have more people in detention centers than they did at that time. And ICE is now patrolling the airports.
Oh, actually, no. I'm actually definitely down here. So you can go, like, walk all the way down.
This is so.
All right, brother. I'll see y'all later. All right.
4 black men signing up to be and I gotta tell y'all, I wouldn't even necessarily say that this is all about money. Some people really just want to feel like something. You know what? Not the kind of raccoons we will have in our cafe. You are correct. I'll allow it. We don't typically allow the whites to be able to call black folks coons, but I'm going to allow it this one particular time because it is just so obvious. It is just so obvious. So this is absolutely overseer vibes. I mean, 100%. Now, Dulles Airport, of course, is in Washington, D.C. And I think it's really, again, I'm with FK47 right here. It's sad. It's just so sad. And they're attacking people in airports and separating them from their children. You know, and that's the thing. It's like, so this really isn't about getting people out of the country, because people are leaving the country and they're still attacking them. So I'm like, how is that a thing? You're right. I stand corrected. Dulles is not in DC, but in Virginia. But it was the only airport for DC for quite some time where you would fly into Dulles to get to DC. And then they made DCA. And I feel like they have never done anything to make DCA any better than when they built it the first time. It is the wackest airport. I will genuinely say, DCA. Oh, can you, Rolando, can you remove ANDA 15V blah, blah, blah? Can you remove them, please? They are an op. I would absolutely say that DCA is my least favorite airport, only after Dayton, Ohio's airport. But yeah, this person absolutely needs to be blocked. You have to monitor and control who comes in your country. Why? Why? You know why? Because we've built a world where everyone is trying to take over everyone else. And so all of a sudden there's a need to monitor and control in a way that is over excessive. You people haven't even lived in a world before TSA, which I find bonkers. And for the record, TSA was created after the 9/11 incident, which we now know was absolutely an inside job. We knew it before, but it is 100% an inside job. So TSA was created as an inside job. Why are you creating security when you're the problem? Because you want to surveil your own people. That's why. That's why. And I was at TCA yesterday and listening to a guy at TCA in Miami who was a TCA agent complain, saying, you know, I mean, I got one more month of not getting a check and I'm out of here. I'm out of here. You know, it's going to be 3 months and without them paying me a check. So if they go 3 months, I'm out of here. Like y'all haven't lived. You used to be able to meet people at the gate. Movies were so much better because they showed people meeting people at the gate. Remember in Love Actually when they met them at the gate? Yeah. So someone said, how do we know this wasn't the plan all along? We do know it was the plan all along. Absolutely. That was the plan. These people have been coming up, putting this together bit by bit, putting it together. So we remember. Okay? We remember. Now, on a positive note, when it does come to monitoring people coming in the country, there are 13 countries that have said, absolutely not, to the blue and white with the star. Yep, that's right. 13 countries have said that if you carry an Israel passport, you cannot come through. Algeria, Bangladesh, Brunei, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Lebanon, Libya, Malaysia, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, which I find surprising, Syria, and Yemen, with the Maldives also restricting entry. Now, there are other countries that may not have gone this far yet, but they have deeply limited or completely cut their diplomatic ties. Some of those countries are Bolivia and Belize, that has severed relations by recalling ambassadors. We did see that Spain just sent their ambassador out. And something big that also recently happened is that oil was purchased in the Chinese yen or yuan. Sorry, the yuan. Yeah, so that is a big deal because the petrodollar, which matches the U.S. dollar to the sale of oil, has been what has kept the U.S. economy going for quite some time. So if you've been talking about, and I'm saying this to myself too, if you've been talking about mutual aid and you've been talking about planting and growing your own food, baby, this is the time, because it's going to get crazy. And I've been seeing a lot of folks online say, you know, if you thought COVID was bad, what's coming is about to be 10 times worse. And I don't doubt that. I mean, I think that there's really going to be a very concerted effort by the powers that be to make the globe go through such a strain and struggle that we then pray and wish and welcome a savior that ends up being a one world global economy. That is what I believe to be the actual effort that is coming through, which is why places like Cuba end up being very important. Places like Iran end up being very important to discuss. So we are going to get into that a little later. All right. Now, there are places that have absolutely continued to stand against their detractors. And, I know we love to like shine a light on China like it's the best place in the world, but China got its issues too. And Hong Kong can tell you about them. All right. Because Hong Kong has really been doing a lot of work to try and like keep them at bay. And recently they're at the UN in Geneva, at the UN Geneva conference, and they had this to say about their 2020 national security law, which I will tell you about after.
Dangerous. When Hong Kong's national security law was enacted in 2020, Western countries condemned us, they sanctioned us, they call it a violation to human rights. But here's what I want to say. Since enacting this law, Hong Kong's economy has recovered, tourism has flourished, the people finally feel safe again. And what's more important is that I really want to ask, what moral authority does the United States, a country that's ruled by the Epsteins, have over my country, a country that has lifted over 800 million people out of poverty? What moral authority does Britain, a country that arrested over 12,000 of its own people for posting online, have to lecture us about civil liberties? And what moral authority do NATO countries that preach human rights in this very chamber while turning a blind eye on the Zionist genocide in Gaza have to tell us what justice looks like? We will not be silenced by nations that treat human rights as bargaining chips, a tool of foreign policy. We will not accept lectures from governments that use human rights as weapons while their own hands are stained with the blood of Palestinians and Iranians they choose to forget. And we will not rest until every nation in this chamber is held to the same standard, until hypocrisy crumbles, genocide is met with action, and peace is no longer a word we speak, but a world we build. Thank you, Mr. President.
That man waited his whole life for that speech right there. Okay. He said, I'm about to give y'all a piece of my mind, a piece of our mind, a piece of the government's mind that wrote this. Now, again, the thing that happens is that you have all these governments that be talking, right, and saying the thing. However, it ends up being the people that are actually doing the suffering and everything. So the 2020 national security law that he's referring to addresses 5 crimes: treason, insurrection, incitement to immunity, theft of state secrets, and espionage, sabotage, and external interference. And essentially, the idea is that they created this law because people they felt were trying to sell their secrets to China and infringe upon their sovereignty. They have recent changes that actually demand folks give up their passwords for phones and or computers, or face fines and jail time up to a year. Now, the UN Geneva Convention, like all of this was not the UN. It was this UN Geneva Convention. At the end of the day, these like let's all sit around and talk and make statements scenarios. This is an international thing that I personally feel really ends up being more of a optics that keeps things in place than an optics that causes disruption of the things that need to be disrupted. And that's across the board. And I say that even as I have been in spaces where the conversation that's being had is behind closed doors, and it's still a practice of politeness that ends up being in the way of progress. And, that to me is really the mark of politics. It's just performance. And some would try to convince us that politics is the necessary interaction of governments to increase trade and to protect its people, etc. And that might be a definition somewhere. However, from what I have experienced, what I have what I have been able to discern from, why can't I think of the term? Pattern. Why can't I think of the term? Pattern. What's going on with me? You know what's going on with me? I'm so tired. Coming from Cuba, I am so tired. Pattern recognition. So basically, when you look at all these things over and over again, you're like, this really just seems like a dance. This just seems like choreo. So that's my thoughts on that. Last but not least, people are not dumb in the way that we think everyone is dumb. And so they're asking questions like, why the heck is we over there in Iran? And so this young man stood up at a CNN gathering hosted by the Zio Dana Bash and asked this question.
Hi, good evening. I'm a waiter at a local restaurant in Queens, a full-time college student who sleeps an average of 4 hours at night and is still thousands in debt. How is a war in a country half the world away, funded by the taxes pulled from my check, helping me in any way?
Yeah, it's look, it's a valid and it's a tough question. I know for certain, and if we,
it's not a tough question, but I'll continue.
We just look at the things the president has put in place in terms of housing and big corporations that are buying up whole neighborhoods, the tax cuts that he extended with the big, beautiful bill, the energy policies that we're putting in place to not only make us self-sufficient, but to lessen these dependencies and lower prices, even lowering prescription drug prices. The president's absolutely focused on what you're seeing day in and day out that's affecting your pocketbook. At the same time, as commander-in-chief, he has to weigh the risks and make the tough decisions, facing some hard truths. We cannot have a world with a genocidal terroristic regime that holds not only your generation but the next generation hostage with nuclear weapons. And those are the tough calls that the American people elected him to make. And I can tell you, having worked very closely with him, he doesn't back off his red lines, and he doesn't enter us into bad deals. But those are tough decisions, no doubt, and I know they're top of mind for the entire administration.
Let me tell y'all, the way these people lie, they lie with the smoothness of a stripper on a pole. Like, it's just, it's so lubricated. It really, the ease with which they just move in and out them lies. That man looked, that waiter student from Queens, Santiago, dead in his face and said, we can't allow a terroristic genocidal regime to exist when we are the terroristic genocidal regime. And under that post, by the way, the waiter said, hey guys, it's the waiter. And he did not answer the question. But, the way that he thought he answered the question was by assuring this waiter that, the administration preventing Iran from having a nuclear weapon is helping Santiago, the waiter student in Queens. That's what he, in his mind, thought was the answer. And he thought Santiago would be like, you right. My fault. Let me go check on my tables. You right. Let me go make sure nobody needs their water refilled. Let me let y'all do what y'all do. Because essentially what he said was, not essentially, he literally said, you elected him to make these hard decisions. First of all, I cannot stress this enough. The electoral election is a sham. I don't know why y'all be thinking that these people are, I do know why you think this, but these people are over everywhere else rigging elections, but you think that they're not rigging your election. That's American exceptionalism. The same country that will not give you health care is not giving you the right to determine its leader. And I don't know why you think that at this point. I understand why we thought that at a certain point, but why we would think that at this point is bizarre. Like, we even see the Epstein files and we know that these people don't even look at us as humans. They eat us. Hello. Which makes them not human, but that's another conversation for another time. We are so fortunate to not only have an incredible guest, but a punctual one. Okay. So we are just going to go ahead and get into our level us up guest of the week, the incredible Bri Newsome. So let's just do it. That's been your 60-second headlines, y'all. Amanda Land. The smile.
Good morning.
Bri, how are thee?
I'm good, but I'm
Okay.
good because I view the collapse as necessary. Right?
Well,
like,
see how we
do you know what I'm
no,
saying?
wait. We are not even 30 seconds in. Please carry on.
So it's like, like, because I feel like when people say, how are you? Right? Like, that's a polite thing. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? And nobody's fine. Nobody's fine. That's the truth, And so I'm trying to answer as honestly as I can in this context, right? Like, I am good in the sense that while everybody's like running around saying, oh, it's chaotic, it's all burning. I agree, right? It has to. It has to. And I think, like, just picking up from what you were just talking about with, like, people asking basic questions of how does this war benefit me? How does, like, I keep seeing the government doing the same thing, and the prices are going higher and my wage is not, and blah, blah, I think that there is a part of us, America, right? The American public that is not ready to let go of the lie. Right?
Just let that
sit. Right? Like, and a lot of people have, I'm not the first one, like, a lot of people have been using the analogy of, like, a dysfunctional family. And I do think that like, it has applications to this situation, because, like, the majority of Americans do not agree with what is going on.
Right.
Point blank, period, right? Like, that's not the issue. The issue is not trying to convince everybody that this is wrong or this is not how it should be going. We agree on that. The breakdown is coming from people trying to fix something, right? Like, I think some of us are trying to rush and fix it and say, oh man, we gotta try to repair it. We gotta make it back to what it was. And the rest of us are saying it was never good. It was never
that girl.
It was never that. And it's time to grieve and let go, and, like, whatever it is, you know what I mean? It's like, when you have to make peace with the fact that illusion that you bought into, that thing is not real, whatever that is, that process is that you have to go through. I feel like I started going through that process during the Obama administration. Like, that was kind of when, that was the first moment that I was able to be kind of like,
what was it?
You're like,
what was it that, like, piqued that for you?
Well, I mean, I remember the invasion of Libya, and I was kind of like, and this, and at this point, this is, like, still early in kind of my, political awareness. Like, I was nowhere near my level of understanding that I am now in terms of, like, what's going on in the Middle East. But I knew that, like, we had been told that it was wrong to do a preemptive strike. And I remember when Obama said that, and I agreed. And then it was like, oh, but now we preemptively striking people, and
just dashing
and so then starting to, like, be willing to examine the contradictions, right? Like, and I think that's just that's where there is a difference for some people. Like, some people, there's something that you idolize, and then you come into the reality that it's not what you thought it was. And some people like cling to it, like they can't let it go. And then others of us are like, okay, let's dissect it. Right.
Yeah.
So like, I think for some of us, it's just been like years and years of dissecting to this point, and in my view, that's where it is. So when other folks are like, oh my gosh, how are you? I'm like, babe, I'm buying seeds. I'm figuring out, like, you know what I mean? Like, I compare it to, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's you.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think, so just thinking about systems collapse and what comes next, I think about when slavery was ending, and so for hundreds of years it had existed no other way. Somebody got up in the morning and rang that bell on the plantation, and everybody had to go to their, you know what I'm saying? And at some point it was like, well, it's not going to be like that anymore. What are we going to do? What are we going to, baby? I don't know what we're going to do, but we're not going to get up and ring that bell. That's where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not, how are we going to feed ourselves? We're going to let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. Let's figure it out. But we're not doing this anymore. We're not doing another cycle of this. And I think that's what the breakdown is. And especially with like white liberals and people who are still trying to redeem it, Black liberals, like people who are still trying to redeem that, like what you're talking about, the American exceptionalism, that's where the divide is, in my view, right now. So I'm good because I know that it has to fall.
You're like, I'm great. Let's see it go. Because the other thing is capitalism, right? Like you were talking about this on the tweets. You said Earth is being pushed beyond limits because, no, actually, wait, that's not even the one I want. I want the one you posted like 2 hours ago. Bri said, I'm up and at 'em. Imperialism, colonialism, capitalism are all extensions of racism. You can't separate the war on Iran, the blockade of Cuba from racism. The USA and other majority white nations only behave this way with majority non-white nations. Like, I feel like this is such an obvious like kill switch for anyone that is still married to the idea of the USA, and yet it is not.
Because again, and I think obviously I can only speak from the American lens because that's the only lens I have. But I think it's like an ego death, right? It's like,
yes, it is. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As Americans, we are so indoctrinated into USA, America's the hero. America saves the day in all the movies. America beats the aliens with Will Smith. Like that's like America, the president fight, Harrison Ford is the president fighting the bad guys on Air Force One.
Stop the asteroid with the guys from the oil tanker.
Morgan Freeman is our president. Like that's, you know what I'm saying? Like the propaganda is thick. And so it's like, even when you can get people to say, well, this current thing is not good, I feel like the real root of it, like being ready to be honest, like this is what it has always been. This is what it's always been, right? Like there's nothing, we are talking about the criminality and the illegality of the Iran war because it's just so blatant and just a lot of aspects. But so was Iraq. Iraq was illegal. So was Vietnam. So it's like and every single one of these wars, to your point, and lifting up what I was saying in the tweet, is about these white nations trying to dominate these Black and brown nations because the Black and brown nations have resources, right, that the white nations want. And instead of approaching it from like, hey, let's set up diplomatic relations,
right,
they want to conquer and control because that's the only way that you have a world run by people like Donald Trump.
Do you really think Donald Trump is running the world?
These things.
Do you really?
Well, I mean, when I say run by people like Donald Trump, no, I don't. Okay. But when I say run by people like Donald Trump, I just mean like that class of people, like the people who are in power simply because they inherited the money from the plantation from generations ago. You know what I'm saying? Like I think we have reached a point of like multiple generations of white men being elevated to positions simply because they were born into wealth and no other qualifications. And I think Donald Trump kind of like embodies that. But no, does he run the show? No. And I think to your other point that you were making about understanding the nature of our elections, you know, and just how disconnected public will is from the agenda that gets set. So no, Donald Trump doesn't. I don't think Donald Trump runs things. I don't think if Kamala Harris was in there, she'd be running things. No. And I think that's like the other part that is difficult for people to confront, because you want it to be as simple as having as just I vote and things, you know, are
Right.
changed. And the reality is no, we're going right.
I had a conversation with someone recently where I was saying, you know, the United States and Israel are tools of imperialism. I don't they are not like sovereign nations in the way that people think they are. Like, they are controlled by banking systems that are based in Europe, that have been controlling things for hundreds of years, by the way, that, you know, have just changed the method by which they control things. And the person said to me, yeah, but when you say it like that, it makes it as if the US and Israel shouldn't be held accountable because they're just tools. And, you know, my take is, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is that I feel like we've reached a point of enlightenment where, and information being revealed, where even through the Epstein files, we understand that there are people that are not in the United States making decisions about how things happen in the United States. And we have to acknowledge that and then confront the fact that, well, that means that there's a hand wielding this tool. And so even if we get rid of the tool, that hand is still there, and it's just making another tool. And that's really what Israel is, right? Like, Israel is just the next tool to wield. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because I wanted to know if you know, where you stand in that kind of assessment of the information that's been put out there.
No, I agree. And I think, again, this is one of the things that we're kind of confronting as Americans, as like, you know, I'm grew up every morning, I pledge allegiance to the flag. Like, well, I was all bald headed. like
Really, you were there?
People, absolutely. Like, people talk about how much they fumbled the millennial generation because we were so bought in. You know what I mean? Like, it was like so chaotic. We're the good guys.
Through a phase where I was singing "Proud to be an American." Like, I had put together, Bri, like a chorus in the after school program. I did this on my own. And we literally sat there and sang, and I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free.
Listen, we don't have to front. We can all admit that we've all been in a process. We're not all, we're at the same place where we began, right? You know? Right. And so, like, I think it's another thing to kind of confront as an American, that like, our country is not a nation in the way that other nation states are. It's just not. It's not. I mean, and part of that is the fact that the United States is this massive empire. It's an empire at a scale that has never existed in human history. And it's more of a corporation than it is
not even
a nation.
Yeah. It's a bank.
It's a bank. It's a bank. It's a business. I once had somebody say to me, like, and I mean, they were saying this like as a form of advice when I was just like, you know, going to college or something, like, you know, America's a business. America's a business. If you either need to be set up to do business with America like a business, or you don't really exist. And that's the truth. I mean, that's the truth. And so you have like two tiers. You know, you have the people who move like a business and are the owners, and everything is set up for, you know, the taxes so that they get the best out of it. And then everybody else is like a wage worker. And it's kind of like, you know, thinking that they're participating in some kind of society that's not really there. And again, I think that's like the whole thing we're confronting. I feel like it's also kind of like this debate over like, well, is the United States following whatever Israel says, or is Israel, but it's the same thing. It's the same, like, to your point, it's the same entity. These are like these are like branches. It's like, you know, it's like,
yes, they're pieces on a chessboard, but
there's
a hand moving them.
Exactly. It's like, you know, Marriott owns the Embassy Suites and the whatever other branches, but it's the same at the top. It's the same company. And that's literally true. Like, literally all of the corporations are owned by like a handful of massive corporations like, BlackRock and like these other entities.
Yes.
So, yeah, absolutely.
You literally can't have money in the market without BlackRock in your money. Like, you can't. I will tell you that as someone with money in the market, in order to fight inflation, I can't avoid BlackRock. I have tried.
Yes. And this is why I have landed at being an anarchist right now, because you can't, you don't opt into the system. Nothing is optional. So like I was thinking about this with retirement. And
I just love you so much. I just love you so much.
These are the things I'm thinking about now, because I just, I turned 40. So now I'm like really thinking about this stuff. And I'm like, so you telling me I have to put money in the stock market? I got to give my money to these evil people in the hopes that the choices that they make with that money is going to have a return so that I can hopefully retire someday.
Yep.
We're not free. You're not like, nope. They have so designed the system that every single aspect of our existence is giving money and capital to them. And again, I think we're at the point now where it's like coming to a head, and a lot of the work is just helping folks get that. The folks who don't get that, like the folks who are still arguing with us about like, well, it wouldn't have been this way if you had voted for Kamala Harris.
Oh my God. Those people make me want to fight. Like, I really want to reach through my phone and slap somebody.
Because it's such a
it's such a false.
It's such a false, it's just so false. It's just so false on so many levels. But mainly, I think the main thing is we have to be real about the lack of control that we have within this system. There's no free market. That's not real.
Let me say
that's not real. We have an ownership class.
Some people really don't want control. I was boarding a plane at LaGuardia. I was boarding an American Airlines flight, and there was a flight attendant that was like, at the gate scanning the numbers, scanning the boarding passes. But then there was another flight attendant who was standing there for the sole purpose of policing your carry-on. And it was very clear that she had failed the police academy test and said, I'm going to bring my policing skills somewhere else, and landed at American Airlines. And she was standing there in her Superman pose. You can't bring that. You better zip that up. Now, I wear a pouch on my waist because I use it as a lumbar on the plane, right? I use it as like a lumbar. So I had it around my waist, and I had it with my sweatshirt over it. And so I'm coming over to the side this is going somewhere, y'all, trust me. So I'm coming over to the side, and I'm like, so I got to zip up my carry-on to carry it on, even though it fits in the thing. Well, you have the extender, and so no, you need to unextend that. So I'm like, she's like, because that's the compliance rules. Those are the compliance rules. I said, but the rules are just being made up. Y'all don't even know what the rules are for. You just making sure that I follow the rules. That's right. So now I zip it up. And then she says, oh, and by the way, I see that bag behind your back. Don't think I don't see it. I see that. And I had my backpack like in a bag. And she was like, this is also not in compliance. You have a backpack in a bag. I said, literally, it says that if you have more than one, if you have more than two personal items, you can consolidate them. These are consolidated. She was like, whatever. So now I finished zipping it up. There's a flight attendant who was standing above me that I didn't even see. And I hear him out the corner of my ear. See, that's not a problem with the rules. You just need to comply. Now you've complied. And I look up and I say, you see, why are you even talking to me? One, but two, y'all are just complying because the other part of it, Bri, is that if I came up there with a bag from a store and it was a third item, y'all wouldn't have no problem. Right? Mm-hmm. Because I've now spent money in the airport. And I said to him, I was like, the whole idea of compliance is literally y'all just following rules that are made for you that you don't even question. And he said, everybody needs to comply. That's just the way the world needs to work. And then I was done being polite. And I said, when the revolution comes, you're going to pray for people like me. I whisked my keffiyeh over my shoulder and went on my flight.
I mean, that's the airline industry collapsing in a nutshell, right? So like people have been making a good point about, TSA and, the shutdown that's going on and ICE coming in there, and folks are like, whoa, let's not let's not rehabilitate TSA too much. You know what I mean? Because TSA itself was like security theater. We all know this. Like it's been, you know what I'm saying? Like we're 25 years or whatever into it now, but like we know that it's always been about performance, right? So like I can't take my bottle of liquid that's this big. I can't take my lotion bottle that's this big. But if I put it into little bottles like this, then it's okay. It never made sense. It never made sense. It never made sense. And it's just like I can't even remember how we got on this topic, but yes, the way that we are like indoctrinated
Because I said that people don't want control. Like this man is literally saying to me, we just need to comply. If everyone just complies, then everything will be fine. And I'm somebody who's like, I actually don't have a problem with complying if it makes sense, but they don't even bother telling you why things are being done. This young man asked a very direct question. How is this war helping me? And he was given a completely circuitous response that landed at just let the president do what he do.
Exactly. And so I agree. Like I think it's that people want simplicity, even if it doesn't make sense. Like I mean, I think
there you go.
I think policing in general falls into that, because anytime you start trying to like actually point out the facts to people of how like policing has nothing to do really with like keeping us safe, that police are more likely to be committing crimes and abusing people and
facts.
blah blah blah.
Just facts.
But it starts breaking down, because I don't want to hear that. I want it to be simple. You know what I mean? And so I completely agree. Like I think that is an element we always run into, because that's more comfortable than dealing with the reality.
So you have kids.
I do.
And you're this person.
Yeah.
How does the mom and this person exist together? Like, are you this honest with the kids, but in their context? Like, I'm starting a children's show called Rah-Rah's Radical Readers. I will be calling you.
Okay, please do.
And, I'm curious how radical folks who have kids are communicating with their children in this world.
Oh, the propaganda is intense.
Paw Patrol.
Oh my gosh. It's so, I mean, I'm being completely honest. And it's like, how do I, so it's a process. Like I have to have I'm having a conversation with him, but at the same time, it's like his concept right now is that, policing is like a puppy who, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like he's 5, my son is 5 years old. Like my son just turned 5. And then I have one that's like 5 months old. So he does, but yeah, I have to figure out how am I, teaching these things to him. And I'm thinking about the way that my mom was with me, because my mom was very deliberate,
okay. My next question was going to be, how did you become like
to
this?
The point,
No, my next question was going to be,
I'm a radical in my mom. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm beyond where my parents are in terms of the radical category right now. But no, just the thing is though, my parents raised me to think critically, and they didn't raise me to feel like I was obligated to agree with everything that they agreed with. They really raised me to think and speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think that's key. And that's one of the main things that like fascism is trying to strip away right now, is just that ability to think for yourself. Because I feel like if I raised him that way, like I grew up on a whole bunch of propaganda. I used to watch Cops. I used to watch that show, and like, Law and Order. I used to think like this Matlock. I thought that's really how it worked. I thought it's, like, yeah, obviously some things are unfair.
We thought prosecutors were the good guys.
Right. If the prosecutor finds out that you're not guilty, oh, they're going to go in there, no, and then you by knowing how to think critically and, really question what you've been taught against what you learn, you develop a different view. And so that's what I'm hoping to impart on them,
I mean, the critical thinking, do you homeschool or do they go to does he go to like pre-K?
Public school.
He's in kindergarten now, right?
He will be in kindergarten next year. We do public school. I don't know if I have an information for homeschool. But shout out to all the homeschoolers. Woo.
So how
God
do you
bless y'all.
feel like, how do you feel about him going into a school system that is actively, you know, you're going to have to be so like cognizant of, okay, what do they teach you today? Because I have to unteach you. No?
Mhm. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, first of all, I think that as the parent, we are the primary teacher. I don't think you
Yeah.
can punt, your child's education to the school system. And there again, I kind of look at my mom, because my mom was like constantly advocating for me, constantly advocating for other kids, in
Mhm.
the classroom, challenging the curriculum when it needed to be challenged, and then also making sure that I was learning things outside of the classroom. So of course I was always the kid in class, like, that's not what my mom told me. Excuse me, that's not, my
Same.
mom gave me a book to bring in today to, but you have to. And just one more thing, like, I think that it's also important as to be there as part of the community. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
why it matters. Like, we can't just allow public education to be taken over by fascists, because that's what the masses end up teaching. The whole reason we have public education is because people are not able to, you can't have a system where like everybody is responsible for educating their children on their own. Some people have a 5th grade reading level because that's as far as they were trying to go, but they want their children to go further. It's not fair if they don't have a system that exists for every child. So that's why I think it's important to be a part of that and advocating for that.
I want to bring this up because no, this one. Because I want to talk about, so I just got back from Cuba yesterday, and the concepts of capitalism and socialism and communism, etc., have been thrown around for a time now, right? And I was also in the midst of a conversation where someone was asking me, am I a Marxist? And I was like, I mean, I don't at this point feel even comfortable calling myself, like, I'm not ever going to name myself something that is named after a white man. I just want y'all to know that.
I'm sorry.
And okay. that may be unintellectual, but I can't. Bri, I've slept on it. I've thought about it, and I said I can't do it. I may agree, but I'm like, nah. I can also, like, so much of what he's talking about existed before he talked about it. So it's like he put it together in a nice, quaint package. There's that, but like I can't do it, Bri. I can't do it. His name would need to be like the Marxist. Like DE''MARX, because then I'm like, okay, the Marxists, all right, I'm with it. So you were talking about capitalism, and you said, Earth is being pushed beyond limits because of capitalism. Again, prior to colonization and the imposition of racial capitalism, indigenous people lived thousands of years without driving the planet to extinction. 500 years of colonialism and racial capitalism has done just that. So in that context, how do we, as folks who are trying to, because this is my last episode of this show, and I want folks to be able to like take this information and pay it forward, right? Like carry it forward in some form or fashion. So how do we take that knowledge of how capitalism has really destroyed the earth and put it into some form or fashion of practice beyond just talking about it?
Yeah, so I think one of the main things is the process of colonization has been a process of erasing any alternative way of existing, right? So it's they encounter indigenous people, they wipe out indigenous people, they wipe out the cultures, they erase histories, because that's the only way that you can create a world like we're in today, where people, they think that's just how the world is. That's just, all we do is consume until we do things
that's just
for
the way it's always been.
And it's not. And my whole argument is that what we had was Europeans who realized that they lacked a lot of natural resources and land, and they decided that they were going to address that by committing a mass campaign of theft and rape and murder, and then everything else was to justify that, right? Like everything else has been built around justifying that. Whereas for thousands and thousands of years, the more practical way to exist, the only way that we have existed, was through approaching Earth as something that has to be sustainable, right? Like people talk very often about the way that indigenous peoples were wiped out by the massacre of the buffalo, right? For thousands of years, people had existed by being respectful towards the buffalo, by saying like, yes, we use everything from the buffalo, but we got to make sure that the buffalo can still exist so we can still exist. It seems logical, right? And but with colonization and with this imposition of Eurocentrism and just this whole other like colonial worldview, that knowledge has been largely suppressed. I won't say it's been wiped out, because a lot of people have still done the work of like holding on to it and making sure. But the very fact of it is that capitalism doesn't work. There's no such thing as capitalism working. It's never worked. It's just that it's like if I say, I have a lake full of water, and every day I go and I take water from that, I say, wow, this is really working. Well, it's working until the lake is empty. Like if I have no system for replenishment. So that's kind of the moment that we're at right now. It's like they're trying to expand this. They're trying to keep doing the same thing that they have been doing for 500 years. And the earth is saying no. Like the earth,
actively,
the people of the actively saying no, because what you are trying to do is incompatible with life, and always has been. And that's the larger conversation again, that people who, want to cling to the mythology of America and, want to kind of like redeem the thing, they're not ready for that conversation. We are where we are. We're here now. We're here now. You know what I'm saying? I'm here now. My people didn't choose to come here. My people, it wasn't a choice for my people to be. We're 500 years in. I'm here now. But we have to deal with this reality, and part of that is saying like it was never good. Genocide is never good. Theft and land grabbing is not good, right? We should wash our hands and not spread disease, right? First of all, I'm honored, by the way, to be the guest on your final show here. But yeah, I think that's where the conversation is now. It's like, here we are, and we've got to move forward, and moving forward means stop trying to mythologize the past. We haven't even begun to deal with slavery, and that's the truth. We haven't even begun to deal with the magnitude of what Black enslavement has been and continues to be. We haven't even begun.
I just feel like folks, I guess, you know what, in your answer, what I'm hearing is really a very real, like sometimes I feel like folks are like, what's the action? And I'm like, but we haven't even dealt with the thoughts.
That part. That's what I keep coming back to. That's what I keep coming back to, because you can't act until you have done the internal work. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to be ready to let go. And that's what I mean when I say we're not all having the same conversation. Right? That's what I mean when I say we're not all having the same conversation, because some of us are not ready to let go or even to confront the depth of our colonization. Like, and again, I'm not perfect, and I have not always, this has been an evolution and a journey for me. There are times I've had to
honestly, you have a perfect record of tweets. I have never disagreed with anything you've ever said.
Well, I love you, Amanda, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm right. But I'll accept it.
It's a good start.
But yeah, I mean, we got to confront the ways that we are deeply indoctrinated into the Americanism. We are. It came up when folks were having the discourse about, Kamala Harris's campaign and imperialism and the flag waving and, Black people being ICE agents and Black people being in the military and, a Black person being at the UN, like that's a real conversation. We are colonized. We are a colonized people. It is what it is. We have been enslaved and colonized for centuries. And the process of coming out of that is not only like recognizing that we're in it, but also being willing to confront all the ways that we have internalized and eaten that stuff and made that stuff part of us and embraced it. We got to let American exceptionalism go. We got to stop using our ancestors as a defense for America. You know what I mean? Yes, our ancestors did great things. That is not a redemptive narrative for America. And very often it is used that way. Like, oh, America did all these horrible, horrible things, but wasn't Martin Luther King a great guy? And so is it, you know what I mean? Like that's the stuff we, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the stuff we have to let go of.
I genuinely feel like the American exceptionalism.
Elders are going to be very uncomfortable.
But even the youngers, like I'm finding myself these days really just trying to expand the conversation beyond the United States, because what I see coming is a transition of power from the United States to a Zionist global power that is very loud in its, hegemony. And I'm just watching the pattern recognition is showing me like, oh, they're getting louder and louder and louder and louder and louder and louder with this. And when I was growing up, Israel was like this thing in the background, and now Israel is very much like in the foreground. They're flying flags at the White House. Like, it's not being hidden. So I'm like, okay, I see where this is going. And when I'm trying to talk to folks about this, what I'm getting is a pushback that says kind of like, oh, that's like a conspiracy theory. It really is just America, and America's the bad guy. And when you talk about simplicity, I'm like, damn, I feel like I'm experiencing that not just from the folks who don't want to work, but even from the folks doing work, because it's also a simpler villain to just be able to say it's just this, when it's really a global issue that we've seen happening, for a while now. Like, we're, it isn't like the US has been acting by themselves when they're doing things like, taking over these other countries, right? They're not operating individually. So I feel like when you see that, you have to say, so, okay, then who's bringing everybody together? Who's bringing everybody together? And I won't let it go. I won't let it go, Bri.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think what you're touching on is like the ideology, right? And I do feel like when we start talking about imperialism, colonialism, whiteness, like that's where everybody starts getting prickly and uncomfortable, right? Because that's when we have to really start getting into the ideologies that are behind the policies and the actions. And once you acknowledge that, then you have to acknowledge that it's not confined to one border, right? Like people have I think of an example when people are like, oh, well, Canada's not this bad, or the UK is not this, and it's like, we're not being, again, you're trying to find some redemptive arc in the brutality that is white settler colonialism, and there just is none.
Yes.
There just is none.
So to that point, I've been asking organizers around me, and I would love to ask you, like, I feel like something that kind of has come to my attention that I guess I really didn't realize before was that there's like the folks doing the work to support the people, and then there's like the folks doing the work to dismantle the system. And those two are not necessarily fully flush. They share a space in the Venn diagram, but I have found, that there is a certain semblance of harm reduction that is being, considered as like very, like a foundation of work of people that are like, quote unquote, supporting the people, that inherently, in my opinion, is upholding the establishment that is causing the harm. So I feel like I'm wanting to see more of there being a decisive effort in organizing that says we're supporting the people so that we can kind of doula them through the death of a system that needs to go.
Yeah.
Any thoughts? I mean, as an anarchist, you have to have thoughts.
Well, I mean, again, I think that's like where a lot of the dividing line in the choices of actions come from, right? Because again, like if you ask me like, well, what should we be focusing on right now? And my thought is like, seeds. Like, how are we going to feed ourselves? You know what I mean? How are we going to feed ourselves? What are we going to do when the power is being knocked out everywhere? There's mass fuel shortages coming. What are we going to do to, but again, that's the difference between like thinking in terms of system failure and replacing the system versus like an approach that is like, how do we help people within this system? And I think to your point, like, I don't think that people can have the best of intentions, because like I feel like I was at that point, right? Like there was a point where I was there. I was trying to figure out, like, how do we change the city policy to make more housing, and then eventually, like, I got to the point where I was like, F this, we just need to take the houses. There's no, and I'm saying, and I'm saying that because I came to a realization that of the death grip that this system has on us, right? And that to a large extent, this is an illusion. I mean, they could cut off our water and food tomorrow. They could cut off our power tomorrow. They could cut off the Wi-Fi signal right now. And so I think, yes, obviously we have to address harm and issues. Absolutely. But I think the difference with like harm reduction and the way that like liberals kind of talk about it, and like revolutionary actions are to do system replacement, right? So we're not just doing harm reduction, we're creating a new way to feed ourselves. Like that's the difference, right? Like harm reduction is like, let's do a canned food drive and let's distribute some good stuff. People need it. Not saying people don't need it, but that's not the same thing as we're going to create a new food system with Black farmers who are going to source their food here, and we're going to that's the difference between reform and liberation. You know what I mean? And both things are going to be going on. But the difference is like our understanding of the situation. And a lot of the quote unquote work is helping the folks who are still kind of in that like harm reduction, liberal reform space move and join us in the more like revolutionary systems replacement. You can still do your canned food drives, but we just need you to understand why this is so critical.
My last question before we go to the folks with their questions. Your thoughts on No Kings?
So I defended the first one.
Okay.
I defended the first one a little bit because I was like, look, like everybody's not in the same place politically, right? And I like literally I had people, like random people saying like, I went to No Kings because I was inspired. And I'm not going to be like, well, that's terrible. That's not the way that we engage people and bring people in, right? That said, I agree with the criticisms of No Kings, because it has become, or maybe it always was, but it definitely is like a containment exercise, right? Like, and part of it, in my view, I really think that Americans know deep down that we're going to have to fight our government. like we know deep down that it's coming. We know deep down it's coming. We see it happening all around the world. Everybody's rising up. Everybody's taking a turn. Everybody's like, when is America going to do it? We had some test runs with George Floyd and Ferguson, and people saw how it went down. And a lot of folks were like, oh, I'm scared to get into that. And now we're realizing that we don't have a choice. We know that is coming. And so I feel like things like No Kings kind of, whether they have good intentions or not, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like sometimes people can be well-intended with things, but it's misguided. It just becomes a way for people to march in circles without having any real confrontation, and to feel like they did something without really doing anything.
Yes. And that also then lets the establishment be like, see, we agree with you, because it's Democrats that are very much there. And I'm already like, if Democrats are supporting this, it ain't shit.
It's like, first of all, we do have kings. We absolutely We absolutely have kings. That's the first thing that we need to be honest about. And I think the other thing is like this trying to position Trump as this like exceptionally bad
Right.
person.
While Bill
It's
Clinton is
dishonest.
like giggling at photos with Epstein.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like, and we're on like the 250th anniversary. Oh my gosh, it's all so cosmic. Like, we have to be real. We have to be honest. We have to be honest. But I think a lot of it is that everybody knows the Alex Preddy and Renee Good thing scared people. It scared a lot of people. It scared a lot of people because folks realized that, yeah, that's how it's going to be. But I'm going to tell you the truth. Whether you want to confront it or not, eventually those food shortages are going to hit. White folks, like everybody else, are going to need food, and the police are going to be put in place to turn. Exactly. Policing, just like that agent with your bag. Absolutely. That's what's going to be. You know, they don't care that you're starving or whatever, because everything is about preserving capitalism. So that confrontation is coming. If you see ICE agents filling the airports right now, that confrontation is coming. I know people are scared, but it's coming. So you got to get ready.
So that's great lead up for this question from Leah Mabry 2939. We have commodified everything, housing to build wealth. Ms. Newsome, how do we unwind that, or will nature take its course?
I'm not quite sure which they mean by like nature takes its course. I think they maybe they mean
I think
like
what you're saying is like the collapse will take its Like, can we unwind?
Yeah, I think so.
That's your answer.
Yeah. No,
I think
so. I think the housing collapse is more likely to happen before we do any kind of like housing reform, because again, it comes into conflict with capitalism. The idea that everybody should have housing as a human right is not compatible with capitalism. So there's going to have to be some form of socialist revolution, point blank, period. That's the only way that people are going to have housing. That's the only way people are going to be able to retire. That's the only way people are going to have healthcare, is to have socialist systems. And I think that's the realization that more and more people are coming through, and that too. And that's why the higher ups are so terrified, honestly.
CFSI N9W says, Ms. Newsome, as a humanist nonprofit, how do you recommend we engage in outreach for funding and support outside of the capitalist system? We are grassroots and opting out of government grants.
It's challenging. I mean, you have to basically build by collecting from the people who benefit, maybe finding like individuals who maybe have more money, but also a lot of individuals who have small amounts of money. The one thing though that I will say that is true without a doubt, the grassroots groups do more with $1 than the big groups do with $1 million.
$1 million.
You know what I'm saying? So, you know, more power to you, because we have to find ways of breaking away. There's just no other option. And I think the question is how. That's the right question, is how do we do it? And let's figure out how.
I do think bartering has to become a very real way of doing things. You know, identifying value beyond just a transactional money exchange.
I agree.
And, you know, I do think there's something very valuable to that, because it also begins the process of undermining money, right? And money is what has us all in a chokehold, even though it's completely made up. And, you know, the people running the show, I think a lot of us look at them and say, well, they're billionaires, you know, they're billionaires. Let me just tell y'all something. Once you get to a certain amount of money, money has no meaning. Like, there's a certain level that you get to where money has no meaning. And I say this because I think a lot of folks are thinking that these people just have like money in their pocket. And especially now that we live in this very digital money world, majority of the folks that you consider billionaires literally don't have liquid wealth. It's all debt. It's all, the country is based on debt. And so, you know, we're the ones down here struggling to actually pay the $30, right? To actually pay the fine so that we don't get the next, you know, so we don't get the next fine and the next fine and the next fine and the next fine. And all of that is the Ponzi scheme that is funding the value of money. So I just want to like help us understand that every time we spend money, we make money valuable.
No, absolutely. That's
which is this fucked up conundrum.
But that's part of the brilliance of Iran blocking the Strait of Hormuz, because now it's like, oh, you know what I mean? Like,
well, they just bought oil in the Chinese yuan.
Yes, and so the currency is not backed. When I say the currency, like the U.S. dollar is really not backed by anything but our ability to force people to trade in it. And so, so I completely agree. Like, I think mentally, I think in terms of our practices, like we have to start moving away from this overvaluation of the dollar. And I agree. I think bartering and trading services and other ways of doing things is a great approach.
Like, I have some stuff in storage in like a basement apartment of this homeboy in Grenada. And I'm paying him monthly to keep it there, but he wants to like renovate that area. And I was like, okay, so like when you do the renovation, if you want me to paint a mural in here, I'll paint a mural in here for a month off of like my stuff. And he was like, yeah, no problem. Like, no problem. It wasn't even like I have to think about it. Well, what kind of mural? What's that? I want that.
A good trade is a good trade.
That's it. And I feel like I'm constantly telling people like the creativity and the imagination is what's going to be needed. Because you're literally going to have to imagine your way out of the indoctrination. You're going to have to imagine your way out of these perimeters that were provided to you by folks that want to keep you out of control, enslaved, like in their purview of what is good, bad, what is valuable, etc. And so that's also why I'm starting a children's show. It's not just for kids. It's because I also want adults to watch it and like break out. Break out, you know, because I feel like the only reason I only have one gray hair, you can see it right. It's right here. You see it? That's my one gray hair. And it's long and I'm just letting it hang. And I feel like that's my wisdom. But I feel like the reason that I have managed to like stay healthy is because like I really live in my childhood. Like I really live in like my inner child, like, and I think and imagine all the time. And that's how I solve issues. Like I literally solve issues with imagination. And I think so many of us have been trained to solve. We're not even trained to solve. We're trained to stress. Like we don't
stress and like you said, not have time to not even have time to think or imagine another way. Yeah.
Okay, so Pete from Ireland says, Miss Newsome, as a squad of alternate system imaginators. Oh, this actually fits what I'm saying. What should we get to work on onwards in wait, he wrote this in a very esoteric way. Basically what he's asking is like, what do you think we should be imagining around right now?
Food systems. I'm a Taurus. I love food, so I think my mind just always goes to food. Like I need to know how we're gonna eat. I need to know this. But no, seriously, like innovative. You know what I mean? Like innovative ways around food systems, housing. Actually, people are doing some really fascinating things. Like it's really pretty incredible. Again, that's like in indigenous science, right? Like looking back at what makes sense for the ecosystem where we are living, right? So again, colonialism is like, well, we had this type of housing in Europe, so we're going to build this type of housing here and this type of housing like everywhere, and it doesn't make sense.
That's why houses crumble with hurricanes in Grenada.
Exactly. So I think it's really about how we are existing and systemically. I'm fascinated by system analysis and system change, and that's where I think we really need creative minds. You know, like for instance, just going back to my food obsession, like we probably need to get back into looking at what is native to where we live. What does it look like? You know what I mean? Like, what does it look like to eat a seasonal diet? What does it look like? You know what I mean?
Like you shouldn't be able to get pomegranates in May. You shouldn't.
Right. As much as we love it, you know, and it's great, you know, but we got to give some things up. We got to give some things up, you know?
I think there's also something very real in what you said about like things being native to where we live, and also reimagining the fact that there was a time, I know this might sound crazy, y'all, but there was a time where this was not the United States. There was a time, a very, very, very long time.
Much longer.
And
Much
like
longer time.
hugely longer.
Mhm.
And the false unity of the United States has us thinking that there can never be a severed version of it again. And someone asked me while I was on the Cuba trip, well, if you don't think what is present now works, like what would you want to see in its place? And I said, first of all, this thing has to be smaller. You know, like we cannot, this is an empire, and you cannot realistically meet the needs of the people at this scale. You can't. You can't. It has to be considered differently. And we have like the states' rights, which is just nonsense. But when we think about those foods, I just think about like, yes, I'm imagining different sectors that are trading based on what is there, right? Like, why are we trying to grow oranges? I was at a nursery and this man was like, I live in Nyack, New York. And this man was like, so I got a banana tree, but it died. And God bless this woman's heart at the nursery, because she tried to say this in the nicest way possible, but she was like, because you don't grow bananas in Nyack.
Yeah. We've become disconnected from the land. And like, I count myself in that. I wish I had paid so much more attention to what my grandparents were doing when they were out there doing the gardens and stuff. But like we've become disconnected. Like, you know, like a
billion. I was in Grenada, Bri, and everything I tasted when I went to my aunt's farm tasted like it was the first one that had ever been grown.
I'm sure. Please take me with you. I want to taste that. I bet that's amazing.
I'll text you.
But yeah, you know, we disconnected from nature, disconnected from ourselves because we're part of nature. Like we've got to get back. We've got to reclaim all of those things that colonialism has like kind of.
What do you do personally to try and like get the reclamation going?
Back to the seeds. So I am I'm not at all a green thumb or whatever they call it, but I'm committed to learning how. I want to get, because I do love food. I want to get connected to it. I want to understand more, like be more connected to the process of growth, the ritual, the you know, the energy of the morning, the going out, because the moon. I mean, I really thought about this. I'm like, what do I really want to do? And I think everybody should think about this. I really think you should just spend some time thinking, if you didn't have to deal with any of this and you were just free to do whatever it was that you wanted to do. And I love the simplicity and the beauty of life that I think we have been kind of disconnected from. There's a certain beauty in like planting and growing something and then eating it and having its essence and its energy feels you. I mean, that's what soul food was really about. Like that's what it really, you know, was about when you talk about it. Like feel like that the energy transfer, meditation, the colonization of time is another thing I think about a lot. Ooh. Like the way that our time has been so colonized and we're forced to think about everything in terms of like this work day. And you know, I still battle against thoughts of like, oh my gosh, I haven't been productive enough today. What's my to-do list? You know, and it's like it's not healthy. That's not a healthy approach to life, but that is again part of what we have kind of like you know, internalized and just been indoctrinated into. The morning should be a glorious time. It should be a time of like, you know, getting centered and you know, and for a lot of us it's like, oh my God, I gotta roll out of bed, get my coffee, try to, you know, get some energy so I can go out here and do this thing so I can try to pay these bills. And that's how our time gets so, you know, colonized, and our time on earth is so precious. It's way too precious for us to allow our whole existence to be about making money for the higher ups. Because we making money. That's the other thing I want everybody to understand. I want everybody to understand. We may be broke out here, but we are generating wealth. There's no like that. We are generating lots of wealth. We are just like enslaved people. We're generating lots of wealth. We're just not getting it. We're not getting our share of the wealth that's being generated.
Facts.
And we have to stop normalizing that. Like, I don't want to hear about how I need to take a second job or
I need to save. I need to budget. I need to do all, you know, like you need to downsize. You need to simplify. You need to,
you can't financial literacy your way out of it. And that's what we have to be honest about because it is a system. It's a system. That's where we go back to, you know, needing to confront the system and not simply try to pretend like, oh, it's the system works. It's great. We just gotta. No, there's no
bootstrap talk.
There's no bootstraps. There's no pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. It's not possible. You try to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and then the government comes and hacks your legs off, literally, because you're not supposed to pull yourself up. That's the whole point.
Or they just make boots illegal.
Or they make boots illegal. Bootstraps are now illegal. You can no longer, you know, we
get
have
those
to
out of here.
Right. We have to be real. We got to be real about the system we're confronting.
So we have two more questions. Ms. Newsome, what do you think about third-party politics?
Sure, why not? Because I'm kind of in the so here's my thought. Let me be a little bit more serious about it. Like, I think that third parties make the most sense as a local level strategy. And I would love to see that being taken on more. I don't know that I'm the one that has the capacity to do that. I can throw out a lot of ideas. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm the one that can do it. But
I've been trying to explain this to people, Bri. Like, I be having the ideas. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm the best person to do the thing.
Exactly. And that's okay. But where I think my criticism of the third party conversation is, I feel like it's always focused on like the presidential race, and that's like the most unattainable, like, you know what I'm saying? But you could theoretically, and this kind of goes back to what they were doing with the Mississippi freedom movement, right? Freedom Summer. Fannie Lou Hamer, they organized their own local party, and at that point they were having to challenge the Democrats because the Democrats were, you know,
the racisty.
Exactly. They had the control, but they weren't allowing Black people to participate or whatever. So I think that my advice, my recommendation, my thought is forming third parties locally where you can really collect the signatures, get people on the ballot, really start getting candidates, and those seats have power. Local and state offices have power, and I think a lot of times it gets lost in like the glamour and the glitz of you know, the presidential race. We're not going. The presidency is the seat of empire. It is the seat of being a war criminal. I wouldn't even. I'm nervous of anybody who even like
says they want to run for it.
Right, like seriously pursues it. I understand if you're like running and it's like I'm running, but my campaign is mainly just to have a counter message to.
That was Claudia de la Cruz and PSL. I was like, why'd you run? And she was like, education. Great, we can be friends.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's cool, but I think in terms of like actual building, I think I would suggest starting locally. You don't have to have a national party. It can be your local party, and you take over your local politics.
See, here's the thing that I think is really going to happen is that we are going to eventually be forced to have to understand locally how to exist, because this federal thing that we're up under is not going to exist much longer the way that it does. And it is going to be your local consortium of individuals that you're going to have to fight. When Bri said earlier, we're going to have to fight our government. That's who you're fighting the government with. So it serves us to understand who are leaderships, you know, who is leader. Like, I know around my way now, like I've only been here a year and a half. I know who the leaders are. Like, I know who the people are that can lead. I know who the people are that are full of ish. You know, like, I feel like that was something that I did not have a grasp on when I lived in Cali, but living in a smaller, like, village type small town space, like, I'm able to wrap my head around it more. And I think it's just for a lot of people, our stress levels, our needs that need to be met are so high that considering being involved in that feels like another job. And it's like, I can't take on another job. I'm trying to like literally handle just the one that's here. But I also feel like when people say local, they still think governor. And I'm like, the governor is also basically a federal position because they are in direct relationship with our president and determining the way that the money of these states that is being generated gets dispensed. So it is also, and it's also deeply controlled by Zionists and AIPAC money. So
yeah, I mean,
like I saw, but like Butch Ware is running for governor, and I personally am like, I think that's a bridge too far. I feel like at this point, Bri, politics is a performance, and folks are just trying to jump in positions. And I want to see actual public servitude take place to make me feel like you are doing a thing for the purpose of just creating more public service, not just getting into a position, because that position was there before you. That system is bigger than you, and you will not individually be able to dismantle it, period.
Yeah. And see, again, I think that goes back to like the need to build a party from the ground up, right? Because like, and let's say even if you are successful in getting one person through, first of all of the power of the empire is going to come forward to crush that person, right?
We saw that with Mamdani. He started
exactly.
one way, he became something very different in the process.
Exactly. So yeah, you have to build from the people level up. It's not easy. I completely understand. Again, I'm not saying do as I do. I'm saying do as I say, because you don't see me out here doing it right now. I don't have the space for it. But the reality is that for a long time, that's how it was. That's how it was. Like before elected office became such like a profession and like a career politicians, right? That's how it was.
It was a side quest.
It was like I work at the post office and I serve on the school board. You know what I mean? I like that. Like that's more how it used to be. And I think it's practical for us to start at that level, start at that very local level. And to your point, as this thing breaks down, that local level is what's mostly going to matter because the larger system is not going to be able to respond to what we need. We're going to have local coordination and self-governance at the local level.
So this is my last question, and it speaks to response. Abby says, Ms. Newsome, Abby, who earlier said, I have never listened to anyone. So that's, Abby is about it, ratty. Ms. Newsome, how do you balance the online space while holding ideas of anarchism? And I would like to add to that, just like, how do your ideas of anarchism exist in your everyday life at this point?
Oh, I mean, a lot of times I just have to pause and say, okay, let me explain that I'm an anarchist. So you know what I'm saying? Because again, we're not all having the same conversation. We're talking about the same topic, but not in the same framework. And so a lot of times they're having, the discussion is within, like the way I describe it is like, there's a box, right? And the box is colonialism, capitalism, whiteness, patriarchy, Christianity, like those things, right?
Feminism,
like those are the box. That's the box, right? And the conversation that anarchists are having is outside of that box. We're sitting outside of the box and analyzing the box itself as it exists. We're analyzing what everybody has accepted as concrete and reality. For instance, the concept of borders.
Someone in the chat earlier was like, we have to monitor who's coming in and out of our country. Why?
But
what makes it even your country?
I mean, that's please invite me on for the children's episode about that, because that's a lot to when you really start making people think about it, and like really talking about what is a border and who gets to enforce it and who gets to maintain it, and like black people don't get borders. We don't get to guard any borders. Whose board? Our borders? Whose borders?
Whose
Whose
borders?
borders? Whose
Our
borders?
borders.
It's not our borders. Whose borders? We have to monitor who comes into our borders, but we cross into whoever else's borders we want to cross into, right? So anyhow, so yeah, but it's fun. It can be fun. Anarchism can be fun because it's like you start helping people like think about, just questioning the existence of the nation state. Just questioning these things about authority. And I think sometimes that's where people get confused. Anarchism is not a dogma. It's not a dogmatic
Explain dogma to folks.
Well, dogma is kind of like a very firm position where you have like arrived at a conclusion, right? You have arrived at this is how it should be. We should be like, we should do the monetary system like this and the housing like this. And anarchism is more saying like the monetary system doesn't work. The housing system doesn't work. What are alternatives? And more specifically, what are alternatives that meet the demand or meet human rights and democracy? Like that's the only dogma I subscribe to. Now I can't speak for anybody else. I can't say like this is how everybody who identifies as an anarchist, but the only thing I am dogmatic about is human equality. That's what the thing is that I'm dogmatic about. So I don't care, like you could present any kind of system, but if it's not valuing human equality, if it's that's where you lose me. And so my whole argument is that capitalism, the United States as it exists as an enterprise, is fundamentally hostile to the concept of human equality and democracy. And we can go on pretending like it's something else. We can go on pretending that the United States has existed to spread freedom to the world, but that's not the truth. And even when you talk about something like the borders, why do the borders exist? Who made the borders? The borders are the borders represent land that was stolen and then militarized to control who can come in and come out. And we don't have free flow. And then you have to get into the whole conversation of like, who made this determination that we can't freely move about the earth like we've been doing for hundreds of thousands?
The only reason we're where we are is because folks left from where they were. That's it.
Right. Because we will have to migrate. There's going to be a mass migration that's going to have to happen in the United States because of climate change. Like we already know this, So my approach to anarchism in the online space, the conversation, I just like to throw questions at people and just, let's think about this. Because a lot of it is people are accepting things as true that are not true and that really need to be interrogated. We can't just simply, like, for instance, the United States empire must be saved. Must it?
Why?
Why?
Like
Why?
But
We have to have a 40-hour, right? We have to have a 40-hour work week. Why? Based on
I'm having
what?
these conversations with people who actually think that they are like open-minded folks. And you're like, they'll say like, we can't just destroy it all. Why?
Why not? Again, that's what I'm saying. Like, hey, and make your case to me. I'm here to listen. Like,
Make your case.
Make your case to me. Make your case to me. But my argument is that you have to actually, like, you do.
One of the things, Bri, that I've been trying to do is encourage folks to imagine around what are things that they have gained from capitalism, because I do think that's the thing that really trips people up, even if they don't want to admit it. There's things they've gained from capitalism that they don't want to lose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's an inherent feeling like, yeah, but if we lose this and we lose that, and I don't want to lose that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then my question becomes to folks, what are things that you possess from capitalism that you can alternatively think about in a community fashion? Because I do think that there is something to be said for ownership. Okay. Like that's why I can't commit to communism, because I do think that there's something to be said for like, no, this is mine. I don't necessarily want everybody to have access to this. This is mine. I like this thing. But there is something to be said for like how that ownership becomes responsibility when it's a part of a community. Like I will say, like, I like my house. I understand though that in a socialist mindset, in a dogma of humanism, I need to be able to make my house useful beyond just for me. That's how I have considered it. So like, I want my house to have a community center aspect to it at a, you know, and I'm working on that. I'm just saying, I'm trying to challenge folks to think about how to rethink the things that they have, because I know people are like, when we talk about anarchy, people think that means scorched earth for
chaos,
everything. Like,
no
you
order,
know,
no chaos.
Yeah, like chaos. We're rubbing our hands together, you know, over a fire in a trash can. That's how people envision anarchy, when really anarchy can be just as organized as the what's the Carnation Revolution in Portugal, where they were just like, yeah, we're not doing that like that no more. So that's done. Everybody, we're not doing that no more. We're doing lists now. You know, Grenada, it's considered a bloodless revolution, but the New Jewel movement with Maurice Bishop, like that was also like, okay, we're not doing that anymore. We're doing this now. Now, are people going to be pissed? Are some people going to feel like, well, damn, you just jacked my shit, et cetera, et cetera? Yes, which is why I'm like, start considering before, instead of feeling like someone jacked your shit, you are sharing it.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely don't feel like capitalism has given me anything. Capitalism owes me. The United States government owes all.
Yeah,
of
but
us
when it's
way
all
more
said
than
and
they
done,
can pay. It doesn't have the money to pay us.
So you don't feel okay?
You know
Capitalism
like,
has afforded me being on a TV show, getting paid a amount of money that definitely I didn't deserve, and being able to live in a comfort that I think should be afforded to everyone. I will admit, I think that's very fair to say.
Yeah, but I mean, we can argue that the quality of life in I'm being honest. I'm just being honest. Like, you have your own place to live in China, and you can afford it, and the people around you can afford it, and like the poorest neighborhood looks like, you know, a suburb here. Like I think, again, so first of all, back to dogma, right? Like, yes, there are some people who their approach is, there's absolutely no, like, it looks like this and blah 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 blah. I don't personally subscribe to that. I think that we definitely need some form of like socialist, communist, like, and basically what that means is just abolishing this like feudalism, this, like, you know what I'm saying? So instead of like a whole tract of land is owned by like one company and they get to decide who can live, like with the bank, they decide who lives there. And if you can't make your payment this month, you know, you are put out. Instead of that, you have a whole tract of land that is collectively owned by the government, the people that pay taxes into it. You still have your house, right? You still have your home. We have places for the seniors to live. We have retirement housing. We have, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's I think that again, part of our indoctrination into capitalism is this idea that like, it's either like capitalism is the only way that we own things. People always own things. Like, if we went back in time, you know what I'm saying? Like, we went back in time, like on this land right here, I couldn't just walk up to somebody and just be like, oh, let me have that. That's my TP, socialist. That's mine. Let me take your sweet potatoes, because we, you know, I mean, people are like, whoa, what are you doing? Whoa, those are my, you know what I'm saying? Like I think there's a lot of room in there to me. Now, I'm not saying that there are definitely people who believe that like it should be completely abolished. There's no such thing as personal property or anything like that.
There are people who definitely think that.
To me, I'm not convinced that is, I personally am not convinced that is realistic. I also don't think it's realistic to try to force everybody to live the exact same way, like everywhere in the world. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, but I think like the basic thing here, just the basic thing, if you're gonna take my tax money, I need to see that going into the stuff that I
the roads
use and Point blank period. Point blank period.
Yeah.
It makes no sense that nobody in this country, especially nobody in this country, should be without housing. Point blank period. That should be
Housing and
a human
healthcare are
right.
my two. Housing and healthcare.
Absolutely.
Like the
Absolutely. And
fact
you
that
lose nothing personally by
No.
everybody having it. You know, I think that's where people get lost. There's like this concern. It's like, well, if everybody can own something, can I own it? If everybody can own it, can I still own it? You know, and it's like, huh?
it's everyone, boo.
Right. It's
Everyone,
everybody.
boo boo. That's what everyone
Everybody.
means.
Right, but that's why we got to let go of this whole like, oh, but I'm a homeowner and you're not. Like that's what we're indoctrinated. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yes.
Like that kind of classism. That's what holds us back. I don't think there's anything wrong with people wanting to have like, this is my house, this is my land, and I pass it to my children. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how people have always done things. The problem is when you have one person who says, I'm gonna take all of this land,
Yeah.
you know, and y'all can't have anything unless you work the land for me and your children work the land for me. And if you don't, I'm gonna starve you. Like that's what we're living under right now.
And I want to say that, you know, in many, it's what's something that's happening in a lot of communities that is not being talked about is how Hasidic communities are doing that. There are Hasidic Jewish communities that are enacting that exact type of feudalism, where they are literally going on school boards, going on city councils, taking over, buying up large swaths of land, not preventing anyone who is not a part of their community from living on those lands, while simultaneously not paying taxes into the actual local governments of those communities. And so then you find that the members of those communities are now not getting support for schools. They are not getting support for public works, etc. And it's a very real thing that I think has been really kind of like kept under wraps because people don't want to be labeled anti-Semitic. And at the end of the day, it's not about anti-Semitism. It's just about not being a thief. And whether you are a white wasp or a Hasidic Jew, thieving is thieving. And it's done in the mindset of you don't deserve this, but we do.
That's what I'm saying. That's the colonialist mindset that we have to let go of, right? Like it's not enough for us to own something. I have to own something that somebody else does not own. And that's what the whole thing is built around. This whole pyramid, this whole scheme is that there had like, as the higher you get up on the ladder, the more you have that somebody else doesn't have. And that's the whole problem. The government, and this is where I'm on board with socialist revolution, point blank period, because it should be a situation where if we're going to have a government, see, again, as an anarchist, I'm like, if we're going to have a government,
if we're even going to have one, right? Because someone asked me about the government the other day, and I was like, now, just so you know, I don't like government in general, but I'm gonna entertain this conversation for the sake of the question. So
because I'm saying, like, if you're saying we have to have a government, you are born into this government, they give you a number and a certificate, and you know you have to pay taxes and blah 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 blah. Then that should serve, like, everything about that government should exist for the common good, or it doesn't need to exist. The only reason a government should exist is to meet the needs and provide for the needs of the masses of people, to, you know, have a place to handle conflicts among people, you know, make sure that people have housing and healthcare and education and transportation. That's the only reason that should exist. That's the only reason it should exist. And we don't need a situation where people are like, well, how can I come into the government, this thing that exists that everybody pays into, and try to make it so that it only benefits me or only benefits these small people. If we're going to do it that way, then don't have a government. Then you go have your community village over there, and y'all do what you do, and, you know, folks go over here and do what they do. But you can't keep compelling everybody to pay into this thing and then tell us that we can't afford healthcare, but we got to pay for war in Iran, and we got to pay for Israeli healthcare. And no.
I'm about to close out, but I just want to come back to something when we were talking about ownership. And I think the nuance is, and I was getting at this, but I missed the word, but the nuance is stewardship. Like, I really understand communities and the spaces that we are in as needing to be considered as stewardship, as responsibility, versus as like, this is mine, not yours, you know, and there being a respect for like, oh, you're responsible for that. And I'm not trying to like take that because I'm responsible for this. And I'm, you know, and I'm finding honor and whatever in like being responsible for that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. No, I completely, stewardship, that word helped me understand. Yes. No, I completely understand. And I understand what you mean when you say that, like, yes, this is mine. And I still feel, you know, which I think we all should, like, you know, anytime you're living among people, you know, yes, it's your space and your place, but you still have to be, you know, considerate of other people, and, you know, and so, yeah. And I think some of that just goes back to like us again in this process of getting back to our humanity and our connection and back to each other. And, you know, I think all of that is part of that process.
Well, you are, speaking of processes, I love a segue, y'all. Speaking of processes, you're a creative. So what are you creating right now?
I'm working on some music. I'm writing.
Me too!
I am. Yeah. We're gonna have a lot more conversation offline. But yeah, and so, and again, back to like the person was talking about imagining, create. Like, one of the things I hate about capitalism is the professionalisation of everything. Like, yes,
I talked about this earlier. Like, just make something. Just make it.
Stuff. Just make it. Like, we were born to make. We were created to create and be creative people. Like, that is in all of us. And I think like there was a part of me that felt like there was something frivolous about creating. And so I would be like, I'd create stuff and then I'd like keep it to myself. So like people would be like, what is she doing? Why is she doing that? Why is she doing that instead of, you know,
stick to the tweets,
getting arrested?
Stick to the tweets.
Don't get arrested, you know.
Go on the flagpole again.
Right. You know, but I realized like, no. This is all part of us reclaiming. This is all part of us reclaiming our humanity. This is all part of us reclaiming everything that they tried to take from us. So damn it, I'm going to spend an hour. I'm going to spend an hour doing what gives me joy right now and creating something, you know? And I get the argument where people say, you know, joy and the art is not the same as facing down the police. Okay, we know that. Like I know my little song is not the same as you know, the actual, like, you know, heavier revolutionary work, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. And if it's what I need to keep going, if it's what I need to feed my soul, you know, because I'm going to create whether I share it with the world or not. That's just, I'm sure you understand that. Like, that's how it is when you're an artist. Like I
just started the show talking about this. That's why I told you I don't disagree with nothing you say, Bri Newsome. I started the show saying, listen, you make stuff even if people aren't watching.
Yeah.
Make it even if people aren't looking. Like it's for your soul. You're looking.
Yeah.
That's enough. And also the energy that is emitted when you are creating feeds the world as well. And I know that sounds kind of woo-woo, but it really does. And it really does. Like, it's just not. And we live in a system that has done everything in its power to undermine the value of art, to undermine our ability to create. And really, you know, my dad ain't shit, but he has said some good things ever so often. And I had asked him one time, you know, why is it that I can, like, why am I clairvoyant? Like, do we have that in our family? Like, how is it that I'm able to like feel things before they happen? And he said, well, yes, we do have that in our family. However, it's also because you're an artist. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, because you do God work. You make something from nothing. You don't think on the grid. And a lot of people think on the grid. So even though they have the ability to tap in, they don't, because they are limited by the finite. You aren't limited by the finite. And so therefore you can. And I genuinely believe that these people know that. They know we have that ability. And that's why there's been so much effort to really sequester, squelch, and just put down, repress that tap in ability that we have as creatives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it goes exactly to what you said, because just that ability to imagine what is not there, the ability to think beyond accepting what is in front of you, or what
Yes.
exists currently.
Beyond believe it when I see it. Like,
Exactly.
I saw it here.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Well, Bri, you're the best. And I couldn't have
appreciate it.
ended this project with anyone better. People are like, you need to talk to Bri. I'm like, we be texting.
We really do.
So, I can't wait for us to exchange some music. And, because that's the other thing. You come to remind you come back to the fact that, like, music is really the most effective way to really tap in with folks beyond, right?
Really
beyond the borders,
is.
beyond language.
It really is.
And so when you got folks
we
like
have to
me
not
and Bri doing it,
ourselves. We have to not
Yeah,
devalue ourselves
I
as
know.
artists. Yeah.
I know we got to do it. So we got to big each other up. We got to make sure that we tap in. Because I'll just say, Bri, you was on my mind today. Sending you some love. Shine on, comrade. Because listen, out here, like someone asked, like, what's it like being an anarchist in the world? It's its own. Being able to see beyond what's here is its own gift and curse.
That's a good way to put it. No, that's a really good way to put it. It's true.
So keep being the gift that you are to us throughout this curse. And thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it. Love you.
Love you too. We're lucky. We are so lucky. We are so lucky. I'm telling you, doing this show, one of the most affirming aspects of doing this show was how many folks have just come on because they're like, I fucks with you. And when you have been constantly told like you are unfuckwittable, it is really a beautiful thing to have minds and hearts and souls like Bri Newsome be willing to take time to come on and share with us. So thank you to Bri Newsome. Thank you to all of you who are still joining us. We're about to hit that 1:00 hour. We've been at it since 10 a.m. So let's get into some okay, someone's calling me from prison. I cannot answer that call right now, but let's get into how Black we feel today. How Black do you feel today?
We believe we are doing at this time is giving a new opportunity to our people, bringing human rights to the vast majority of the people who have never had any human rights, who never knew where it was to press a button to get electricity, as you no doubt can do in your house, who never knew what it was like to put a tap on and see pipe-borne water flowing through that tap, who never knew what it was like to get free health care as we now give, who never knew what it was like to provide free education as we now provide, who never knew what jobs were like. They were 49% unemployed before the revolution. Today that is 12% unemployed, 37% reduced over 4 years. That is what the people of Grenada today regard as freedom. So far as your non-aligned part of the question is concerned, again, I think you are really grossly mistaken as to the true meaning of non-alignment. Non-alignment to us, in essence, really has to do with diversification, really has to do with the expansion of your relations, really has to do with recognizing that the world is not just west or east, but that the world is west, it is east, it is north, it is south. And therefore the importance of developing relations with as many countries around the world as you possibly can. That is a right that the people of America have reserved for themselves. It is also a right that the people of the third world, like Grenada, also have for themselves.
So that is Maurice Bishop, who is the former leader of the New Jewel movement, who brought socialism and communism to Grenada in the late 70s and was subsequently assassinated by the United States. And, I wanted to play this clip because Maurice Bishop was also very closely tied to Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution. And Cuba actually built the Grenada airport that we now use today, that is called the Maurice Bishop Airport. And, you know, there's a lot of differing opinions about the New Deal movement. Even when you're in Grenada, it's kind of hard to get people to talk about it, to tell you what, because there's kind of this like trauma response that I think a lot of people have around the socialist and communism movement of the New Deal movement, because Grenada being such a small island, it really it wasn't like you were just seeing politicians who existed in a different class going to prison once the movement came into power. You like saw your neighbor, right? Like you saw people who were like a part of your daily life. And I think that was a unique, that was unique to Grenada, because it is such a small place that I feel still resonates to this day, where you really can't kind of talk to people and get their full response about it. Nonetheless, I do think it's something to say that, and we'll talk about this later in the show. Hey, Erica, we have one of our favorite organizers here, Erica Ford, the Peace Doctor, who, by the way, was on like the 3rd episode of Views from Amanda Land, our Christmas episode. You know, I really feel like what Bri brought to the core is the realities around these limited versions of what government could be. This is a capitalist government. This is a socialist government. This is a communist government. And in different places and different spaces, things have to be flexible and arise based on who's there. And I think when we look at China and we see the multi-layered fashion of their government, we have to understand that like economic systems are going to switch and are going to shift. Now, someone here said that they heard that that a local took the life of Maurice Bishop. I have never heard that before, but what I do know is that we do not know where Maurice Bishop's body is. It was never found. And his pregnant girlfriend was also put in front of the firing squad. So, but he was not like killed like in the street, like, rest in peace to Nipsey Hussle. It wasn't that type of scenario. There was absolutely an insurgence by the United States government that sought to dismantle and take out the New Deal movement because of a fear of the spread of socialism and communism throughout the Caribbean, as it was doing in South America, etc. And you know, I will say to this day that many of you do not seem to grasp that mindset of socialism is bad is literally just a psyop to make you to manufacture consent for the repression and the invasion of countries that are practicing this, as if you are not. The United States practices socialism. It is completely hypocritical, 100%, and it is a lie to say that the United States is 100% capitalist. It is not. It doesn't want anybody else to actually enact socialism, because then it will limit their ability to extract everything from these places. However, the United States utilizes social security, has literally social in it. You can't spell social security without social. Okay? So that is, again, one of the things why we talk about having to deconstruct, having to ask questions, having to disconnect. Y'all gonna learn the song. Psyop. This is a psyop. They don't can't believe nothing, because they've been fronting and they done lied to you. That's a song I have coming soon. Okay. Now, in that regard, in speaking about Cuba, let's get into our high quality wine.
What's up?
Wow, you made it.
To Havana after 4.5 days, bringing solar panels, hygienic products, medical supplies, and food. People from 11 different countries were on the boat, some of whom went to Gaza on the flotilla. We are so happy to be here with the people of Cuba.
But you got a better greeting than maybe Chris got in Gaza, right?
Yes, totally. The people on the boat, some people were part of the Gaza flotilla, and they were saying this is the first time they were able to actually land and complete the mission without being intercepted. And that is because of the international solidarity with the Cuban people. Cuba sends doctors, the U.S. sends bombs. We need to show that the people of the U.S. will bring aid and will bring solidarity.
First not to be intercepted, you said that.
Yeah, of the flotillas.
Of the flotillas.
So many people on the boats went to Gaza with the flotillas, all of which have been intercepted so far. But this one, the mission came with the aid that the Cuban people need due to the blockade. Much different. It's actually weird to be on land right now, to be honest, after a couple of days.
So that is Olivia Odunuchi. She represents Code Pink most of the times. I'm not sure if she was necessarily on this blockade, on this ship, but she has been on the show as well. Shout out to Olivia. We told her she was a high quality white when she was on the show, and she's a high quality white right here. Now we know that we've also had Thiago Avila on the show, and Thiago was a part of this flotilla that took a bunch of aid to Cuba, including solar panels, right? And so, we're seeing folks that are bringing this energy to Cuba that also was extended to Palestine. And I've had some people say but who should we prioritize? And it's like, we're able to do it all. That's what it's about. And there are folks that are actually cut out for this right here that are not. I'm not getting on a boat, but shout out to Olivia and shout out to all of y'all on that boat, because you are cut different. And I commend you. I commend you, because the truth of the matter is that folks really don't understand how real it is and how necessary it is to continue to bring support to places like Cuba and Palestine. And when you see people say are the people getting the stuff, et cetera, et cetera? Yes, they are. However, I also want to add that the people are literally asking for folks to come. That's why when people would be like, you're just posting about Palestine, but you don't really know about Palestine. I'm like, Palestinians are the ones asking me to post. Now, I just saw that 14 members of a delegation that went out to Cuba have been detained at Miami International Airport, including Chris Smalls, Chuck Modi, Katie Halps, and Oya J22, as well as Lavish Mac. So, hopefully they will be able to get through without any problems. And, the stopping at the airport is really an art of intimidation. It's this act of trying to let you know, we know that you are on this list, you out here talking too much. And I feel like if you're getting stopped at the airport, it's a bitch and it shouldn't happen. It's also an honor. So shout out to them. And shout out to Katie Halps. I actually met Katie Halpern when I was in Cuba, and we did a little interview on camera, and I had never met her in person, but she does really good work. And as a former comic, I really am loving seeing comics that are making that transition to actually be, I don't care if they've been detained or not. That's what the person who's there said about themselves. They said, we've been detained. So I feel like, we don't really, let me just also say this. Some of these words, I know there's legalese. However, there's something to be said for the fact that if you're stopped for secondary questioning, you can't leave. So you are in essence being detained. So I know that there's that term of officially detained or not, but if I can't leave, I am being officially detained. That's just the truth. And we kind of sometimes get, I think, lost in the semantics because we want to kind of protect our fear, but it is a detainment. If I go there and I can't bounce, I understand, but the lawyers also know that they can't leave. They're officially detained. Chris Brown, let me not address that. There's also some people who be putting themselves through things because they want to give themselves value in a certain way, but that's another conversation for another time. So that hopefully will get sorted out quick. I know there's lawyers that are working on this and that are actively on deck for folks that are doing this work. And I want to shout out those lawyers and thank them for their dedication to being available to the people who are putting their lives and their freedom on the line. So much, much, much appreciated. Let's do some Black Curate news that is in alignment with this story right here.
Black Curate news. Politics. Black Curate news. Pop culture. Black Curate news. Sports. Black Curate news. Justice.
So Barbados and Cuba have launched a relief initiative. Let's check it out.
January 29th, the President Trump started applying executive order to prohibit it or limited the exportation of oil towards Cuba from third countries. So this is the reinforcement of the U.S. blockade against Cuba that has been imposing for more than 60 years. This is a new attempt to suffocate the Cuban economy.
Barbados have over 150 medical students, most of them all over the world, who would have benefited from the Cuban scholarship program. The Cuban government, in collaboration with the Venezuelan government, send an aircraft to Barbados and many of the Caribbean states. They collect the patients, they took them to Cuba, they house them for 2 weeks, and they carry out the eye care program with operations and treatment so that those people can return to the Caribbean, and then so that they can also see.
And I want to speak specifically to the grassroots people, to those people who know what it is to live on or below the poverty line, those people who know how to survive from day to day without basic necessities. This is what the people of Cuba are facing. Their hardship is our hardship. We are one family in one house, just different compartments. And we need to make sure that we look out for our brothers and sisters. We need to be each other's keeper.
Shout out to Ahmed Caballo and Sovereign News for bringing that to the light. So the Barbados Cuba Relief Initiative, this is their caption. Bajans are being called on to stand in solidarity with Cuba as a new humanitarian effort gets underway in response to the escalation of U.S. measures against Cuba, including the fuel blockade. The initiative, led by the Hibiscus Sports and Culture Foundation in collaboration with the Barbados Cuba Friendship Association, aims to mobilize national support in response to ongoing economic and material changes affecting the Cuban people. Really happy to see this as a member of the Caribbean community, as a member of the Black Caribbean community. You know, there are people who somehow feel like Cuba is not in alignment with the Caribbean. You know, it is a different experience of the Caribbean because it is communist, etc. But ultimately, they are a Caribbean island that stood up to colonialism, period. And not only did they stand up to them, they did so and have held their ground. So doing that is not to be overlooked. I think it's really in our best interest as Caribbean islands and countries to see how that is, that is protected and preserved. It doesn't mean that there doesn't necessarily need to be shifts and adjustments to the now that may not have been present in the time of the original revolution. However, it does mean that that only is going to happen. And by the way, that can trickle down through the islands. It's only going to happen if we all do exactly what that woman said and see ourselves as members of the same house, just in different compartments. So big up. Okay. Big up to the Hibiscus Sports and Culture Foundation, and the Barbados Cuban Friendship Association for putting this together. Much, much, much appreciated. So we are going to be heading over after the show to Patreon for our critical thinking exercise. And I just want to reiterate what our critical thinking topic is going to be about. Let's get it. So, for those who don't know, I went to Cuba for the last week with the organization IFCO, Pastors for Peace. And I want to have a conversation with Patreon members about not simply just the trip, but the shift in mindset, the things that I learned on that trip that really kind of were expanded. Now, I can tell you the start of that conversation here is around what solidarity actually means. I think for some people, they think solidarity is simply just like, giving stuff to people who need it. That is charity. That's not the same. Solidarity is showing support beyond material goods, but also in values, in order to protect the efforts that are being laid out on the ground and that have caused the need for the support. You see, solidarity is not just showing up with excess. It's showing up with spirit. So when we look at Cuba and we understand that Cuba has suffered greatly for standing against imperialism, we remember that many of us are benefiting from imperialism in many a way. And so the solidarity is shown because it is also us knowing that it is our responsibility as people who are benefiting, even if we are not the ones enacting it, to do the counter work that our government is doing. We should be acting against the way that our government is committing harm. If we want to say that we are not our government, it is just the United States, if we want to be on that wave, then we have to actually do that in action. We have to do that not just with our voice. We have to do that with our funds. We have to do that with our time. We have to do that with our bodies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is the solidarity that I want to talk about. And I want to talk about in Patreon where I saw the shift for myself in how solidarity really is positioned. Because I know for me, there's been a human to human concept around it, but I had kind of missed the necessity to show up in solidarity because this nation has carried out a revolution that demonstrated for us that which we have yet to be seen in our own country, but that we should see in our own country. Free healthcare, access to schooling, etc. So shout out to Barbados and other islands that are supporting, and to everyone in the delegations that went out to Cuba to support. There were a number of delegations that showed up to be a part of the show of support And it wasn't simply just to like broadcast to the world. It was more so to broadcast within Cuba to the people of Cuba to know that they are not alone. I think there's also a certain aspect of also just kind of trying to make it clear that the government that continues to stand on the revolutionary principles of the Cuban Revolution led by Fidel Castro is supported. And I think that is, you know, for many Cuban people, there's a bittersweetness around the revolution. I'm not talking about those Cubans that are in Florida. No, I'm talking about the ones that are on the island that believe in the principles that are also feeling the weight of the sanctions. And so what Cuba is trying to make sure of is that their principles are not lost, because that is what the effort of the U.S. is trying to do. It's trying to dehumanize them. They took sovereignty of their humanity, and the U.S. is trying to convince them that it's not worth it. Which brings me to today's PSA. PSA. Y'all, if it ain't about revolution, I don't want to hear it. That's the framework I'm working in from this point forward. Because I really don't want to continue to hear about a third party, or about we need more parties, because all that sounds like to me is I'm still trying to reform a thing that ain't for us. It still sounds like I'm trying to, you know, keep this thing going and tweak it. And, you know, it still sounds like I'm trying to put a kit on a Honda. I'm trying to put a Mercedes kit on a Honda Civic. And I'm done with it. In Cuba, what you are learning in real time is that there is another way. There have been other ways, and there will continue to be other ways. And the only way that will come into existence is by a dismantling of this way. There are hands at the top that control the banking systems, that control the money, that control the resources of the world. And those hands will continuously attempt to convince you that there is no other way. And that is their goal. That I talk about that in What Would the Ancestors Say? It's the lie that convinces you to forget. And so what revolution is the revolution that is needed is one that is of remembering. And I don't necessarily mean like remembering a very particular governance, right? It's not necessarily remembering the Iroquois governance. It's not necessarily remembering the Mayan governance. It is remembering that there has been a before. And that because there has been a before, there can be an after. And there can be a new. So I don't want to hear any more talk about the milieu and minutia of what can be done in the now, unless we are talking about bridges to new beginnings. Just spare me, because I ain't with it. Move around. PSA.
Amanda.